We are back here at Deadlock Fight Night, presented by Intel. North America, the money match underway. Hydra Nation looking to reclaim the throne versus Melee Creeps. I'm ZP here with DDK and Jake, and it's been a wild one. Calc is on support. We're talking about probabilities of a meteor hitting the planet. But you know what we have here, guys? We have some good old-fashioned Deadlock action, and we'll get to see if this new Hydra Nation squad has what it takes to reclaim the throne.
Yes, I will jump in and say something. So yeah, this is cool because Melee Creeps, if you guys somehow missed it, obviously they won, they broke the streak that Hydra Nation had, and they're on a lot of momentum right now. They found a staff that works for them. They are leveraging it pretty hard. They're studying the other regions. They are scrimming like crazy. These guys are taking it seriously. Hydra Nation are going to have to put on a show to win this, but honestly, I mean, they can definitely do it. I think, you know, we've been talking about how well these new additions definitely fit into the roster. Based on what you guys are seeing with Young Calc and the support, how likely do you feel like Hydra Nation will be strong enough to deal with Melee Creeps there?
Yeah, Ivy was solid for me, but I mean, that last game wasn't really a test for Young Calc. I think the real question for Young Calc will be if he gets pushed deeper into the hero pool. You know, does he have the Calvin, the Viscus, the McGinnis, you know, the depth across the support roster? We've seen some teams with their supports playing Vindicta or even what's the one I'm looking for? I lost it, whatever. But you got to have a lot of hero pool on support, right? Like you get pushed across the roster. You can't always just get the Ivy. And I think Ivy is probably the most accessible support for a non-support player, because in the end you're still doing a lot of gun damage, a lot of tracking, wave clearing, healing people up, and then it's just kind of like old thing to show global presence and save people with heals and stuns. Something like a Kelvin is probably a lot less accessible and requires a little bit more comfort and experience.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see the draft here in particular, where I do think one of the things that really did help Melee Creeps dethrone Hydra Nation is that you had a lot of game tape on Hydra Nation in terms of how to pick and ban against them. You didn't have quite the same amount of info on Melee Creeps. It's certainly, if you're Hydra Nation, you weren't applying all your watch time to Melee Creeps. But when they dethrone you from your spot, that is where your draft strategy will change a bit here. And Dan, on top of the roster changes, I do think, for me, I look at this and I think that if nothing else, Hydra Nation will have better drafting this week than they did when they lost the title.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It felt like we saw some toes getting stepped on with Lord and M coming in there, and then sort of Vegas sort of playing roles that we were not used to seeing him play. But also, Vegas has been extending his hero pool quite nicely. We saw like a really good Viscus actually from Vegas not too long ago, whereas previously we saw Vegas typically on like the Flyers, and then maybe plus Mirage was kind of where he was just living. So Vegas is a bit more versatile, but even Vegas I think was kind of pushed out of maybe some stronger positions. So hopefully that is all remedied here today.
I do love the signature heroes here, Jake. Calc on there. But looking to the other side of Melee Creeps, they who hold the throne right now, there's a lot to be said about, you know, strengths of the different players here, where, you know, it's funny on the signature heroes part, I would just edit it here and be like, all right, Cool Cheese Holiday, because to me, that was one of the biggest stories last week.
Yeah, we've seen Holiday really come out and be this critical character right now in the meta, where I think for a while people were still, you know, min-maxing the potential of that stun slam and all the different combos you could put together with the hero. So for sure, having like a really comfortable Holiday specialist is going to pay dividends right now.
Well, we are ready, I believe, to get into the draft, see what is cooking, where one of the cool things here too is that this is Hydra Nation's first time getting to choose first or second pick in the best of three. They've been in the defense spot every time in every other previous DFN except for now. So they now get the unique experience of being the challenger for the money match. They also got to do their first Mo 1v1 earlier today too. So first all around here, Dan.
Yeah, so previously we saw them opening up with a Vindicta ban. I wonder if they're going to make it as like standard, a standard opening ban here, or if we're going to see what you guys were talking about, where it's more targeted. Melee Creeps last time, I think in the post-match interview, told us, was it Cool Cheese that spoke to us? I'm blanking right now.
It was Cool Cheese. Cool Cheese Holiday, where I think, by the way, they will ban Holiday after what happened before. But no, they banned Yamato, so I am wrong, but it was Cool Cheese.
They could take it for themselves if they wanted to deny it still. I think that's an option. I also think as good as Holiday is, I think there's we've seen it from Europe, that choice to play pocket and a flyer carry to sort of like play around Holiday's inability to stun people off of the ground. I think that's sort of a different way to approach dealing with the hero.
Yeah, one thing I was going to mention, I think Cool Cheese was talking about in the interview how just their team is pretty comfortable playing some of these like off rolls and some of these like weirder comps. So, and that was like one of the ways in which they were able to make Hydra Nation kind of uncomfortable in the draft. So yeah, that hopefully should be fixed here for Hydra Nation in terms of how the new roster will accommodate better role fits across the team, or rather a deeper roster that's possible.
So Dan, you had brought up earlier in the broadcast the idea of, hey, how deep is Calc's support pool? I think with the Kelvin being banned, I actually really like the idea of melee creeps here to grab the Ivy because, I don't know, like maybe there's a world where Calc actually plays a secretly sick Dynamo or McGinnis, but that seems a little bit less likely to me. But also, in terms of calling it, Jake, you had mentioned the idea of, well, they could still pick the Holiday to deny it, and they do just that.
Yeah, they do leave themselves open, I think, to dropping some really high quality picks like Paradox, Wraith. I still think Shiv is up there, although, his results have been mixed, and in EU, the prio is super low. Curious to see what melee creeps go with their 2-pick. Vindicta, of course, you stop banning it for 1 second on Hydra Nation, you get it. Vindicta, a great flyer, hard to catch for Holiday. And now that I see this, this is the perfect opener for melee creeps.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a world where we don't get Paradox here. But I mean, it'd be kind of cool to get a Viscus actually. I think, especially against the Holiday, again, just the cube is just so much utility to deal with some of those ults. But surely it's going to be Paradox, right? Right?
You would think.
That's the most natural choice here.
It was smart.
Okay, all right.
Because if you don't pick Paradox, then you don't have a playmaking option because they would probably run Holiday Paradox together. I mean, it is viable. But in return now, you are 100% giving up the Wraith. I believe Wraith will go off the board because Hydra Nation is one of the teams in NA that highly values Wraith. So Wraith, I think, is gone here 100%. And also, I think Calico is probably gone, with how Calico has been valued as arguably the #1 priority for frontlining, right? So if I'm looking at this, Wraith for sure, and okay, Wraith Mirage then, you'd think. If they don't pick Wraith, then that's just NA being NA. Wraith should be picked.
I liked it when you said the Calico also, just quickly, because just like the Holiday Calico, like the early game presence with those two is actually pretty mega.
Yeah.
I do think Vindicta could present a kind of a problem for Calico since she loves to be so mobile and, could get caught by that Vindicta tether or just be unable to actually connect to the Vindicta deep in the backline or up in the sky. So Mirage is pretty strong at like shooting up at that Vindicta, pressuring her out of the sky because, you start stacking up that passive amplification. Vindicta typically relies on being so far away that she's not worried about the damage. But I think Mirage doesn't mind just like extended long poke trades, like poking, and eventually you just pop for half your HP on Vindicta. So I like this response. I think the global presence is always valuable, making Mirage consistently a top pick in competitive play.
Now I'm thinking about the order here. I think melee. I'm drawing a blank on who gets the first pick out of the bans here, but I think there's a world if Melee Creeps does have the first pick out of the bans that they could ban something like Ivy and then pick McGinnis if they want to do something and just like really make the support plan very difficult for Hydra Nation. I think regardless, this is at the point where because of the early Kelvin ban, they have the option of, really testing Calc support hero pool very early into this draft here, Dan.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, the Warden, I feel like, is somewhat of a steal, obviously away from hydration. Actually, the Sinclair ban, that's kind of nice, considering how just annoying Sinclair is. Obviously, we don't know Hydra Nation's test in the previous best of one's not the greatest like barometer, but still, Sinclair is definitely good and very annoying to play against. And a lot of people have been banning the annoying stuff, like Bebop is another annoying one that's hard to kind of quantify sometimes in these fights. So, but I would love to have seen Calico on melee groups, but maybe it's still possible.
I'm not mad.
Might even get banned out. Yeah, okay, it is getting banned out.
Do they grab Ivy though? Grabbing Ivy here, I would love. I actually think grabbing the Ivy in this instance, again, just to test Calc a little bit. And also, lets us see more
I
Calc's
think Geist is still a super high pro hero left in the pool. So So I wouldn't hate to see Geist, you know, if you like lasso her in on holiday and you just can't quite full burst her before the duration, she's gonna swap and trade you out. And so she could be kind of confident frontlining potentially into the holiday.
Let's have fun.
CP, I was putting all of my energy into the
I know.
into the
problem is
I didn't know where it's going.
Ivy
Maybe it went to the wrong
plus
place.
McGinnis. So, you know, it's like, I guess you could force Calc to play McGinnis, but I don't think, unless that's like a huge problem for them, I think it only makes sense if you're sure that Calc doesn't play these other heroes. And honestly, who knows, right? At this point, Calc's shown a ton of flexibility. He's played a ton of heroes. You know, I think he's just a smart player. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a player who's going to suffer so much being on an off comfort pick.
Take whatever they throw at
Well,
me.
Oh boy, speaking of comfort picks, let's go.
The Abrams comes in, and this is where you wonder, okay, how deep is the Calc playing support? Because objectively, based on all available evidence that we know, the best player to play Abrams on Hydra Nation is Calc. Now, there's other concerns there of, okay, what's the overall team flow? What's the overall plan? There's a lot of reasons as to why you might not have Calc on the Abrams. But on the same note, you would think you put Calc on the Abrams.
I feel like Talon could be a good pickup for melee creeps now at this point.
Wow, 7 coming to North America, huh? I guess they like what VP have been cooking.
Yeah. 7 was dead, and now 7 is back here, Jake. Honestly, I think they reserved it just for you. They know how you feel about 7. They're like, you know what? We gotta bring it back.
I like the ulti build on 7. I think maxing the 3rd skill for farm snowball and then maxing ulti, I think it's kind of sick. I think melee creeps have no hard stun on the whole draft right now. So there's so far nothing that can break 7's ult, right? I mean, like things like Wraith are like the best, but I mean, even Ivy, it's like you can pretty much only stun things on the ground. I guess I think you can land on 7's head while he's ulting with the stone form, but that's pretty ambitious to like find that in the middle of a team fight. So I think 7 going for an ulti build here potentially could be super powerful. It could actually be a big threat getting into those late game scenarios, and it does put melee creeps on a bit of a clock.
Okay, so the final pickup. Yeah, I still feel like a talent. Just like having some more backline DPS or some kind of backline DPS would be nice. Get some Furnace instead. Yeah, I don't hate that. I feel like the front line's really nice for melee creeps. I feel like their objective game will be pretty strong with this.
No, I think by all reasonable metrics, melee creeps have a pretty strong composition here. They have a great front line. They have Paradox and Vindicta, which gives you incredible mid-game control between just Paradox swaps and the amount of pressure that Vindicta puts on just simply roaming with early game assassinate, right? Like their early to mid game on melee creeps is really good. The final payoff with Infernus, maybe not as good as other options, but Hydra Nation, okay, final pick Talon, that's probably gonna be what Vegas will be playing here. I mean, Hydra Nation is still, they have plenty of options here, especially if Abrams gets ahead. Like Abrams Holiday can be in ways just as scary as Paradox Vindicta, depending on how the early lanes play out, Jake.
Yeah, I think the late game death balling from melee creeps is going to be really terrifying with like the AoE from Infernus, Ivy, Geist, Warden, Vindicta, and then, you know, Paradox just kind of like playing with the mobility across all of that. It's going to be incredibly hard to like push into these guys and win that 6-on-6 team fight. So Hydra Nation, I think they're going to be playing a little bit more pick heavy, a little bit more on the global presence from Mirage, on Abrams, pulling people out of position. Great talent could be, you know, finding big snipes. But I'm sort of curious because I'm wondering who scales better in the ultra late game. I think both teams are going to be actually quite strong in the late game. Both teams have a relatively late game oriented drafts. And so I think this could be one that goes a little bit longer unless somebody comes out of the lane super hot and is able to snowball.
Well, this has the makings for a really awesome rematch here. Deadlock Fight Night, a title match. Can Hydra Nation regain the title against melee creeps who currently hold it? It remains to be seen, but I like the comps from both teams as well. I really like that late talent pickup. I feel like that adds also some good defensive potential because I feel like personally melee creeps are going to be a little bit better on the objectives, especially seeing in the meta where it's more common now for the last stands to be used to just guarantee clear objectives early and get that early objective advantage.
Well, also one thing that we didn't immediately touch on is that this is also a full no support setup from Hydra Nation. We've seen in Deadlock at times that having a support is optional, even though most teams will run a McGinnis or an Ivy or especially a Kelvin. In this instance, they just decide we don't need it. An early charge from Abrams. Calc making his presence known.
Abrams support on the way.
He supports by killing.
You don't know about it?
Yeah. He supports by killing. GG's. Jake, though, quick thoughts, you know, before you head off for a bit. What are you feeling right now on this game, lane-wise, and also the fact that, you know, Hydra Nation is running without the typical support?
Yeah, I think melee creeps have like the more conventional strong draft, where Hydra Nation are definitely going a little bit wonkier. But that being said, I think this absolutely could work out for them. I think it's going to be all on this like early to mid game, who can get that lead, who can start snowballing their advantages. Both teams are relatively strong in the late game. It's going to be about who gets there first.
Well, my question, CP, is whether or not Hydration's kleptomania will be kept in check this game.
You would think. Also, I mean, do you want your 7 to be the one deep diving into the double vaults? I mean, look, 7s are kind of greedy as you go, and I mean, the kleptomania may come back into fray. However, I think melee creeps, look, they're running like Vindicta and Paradox, right? The mid game is going to be fraught with danger. One would think. One would think.
Yeah, I do like how finally I think players are adapting 7's playstyle a little bit better to just keep up with the pacing, because that meta of just like farming the jungle is just it's just way too slow, and you're out of the action too much for this for like this level of play. So I'm going to be looking forward to seeing a more active 7 from Hydra Nation too.
No, I mean, you're completely right. Just like how 7 has evolved in the last few weeks, where he stopped getting played as the hyper carry, and now you have Hydration on 7. Who was expecting to see Hydration on 7 even a few weeks ago? I know I wasn't. Got a little split screen action here, though, and you see Geist power in lane. AVG just making life a little bit difficult for Okain, though. The actual lane soul distribution in lane 4 pretty even between the two. Relatively quiet early game, in fact, Dan, so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, you know, given what we saw in the previous game, where the early laning phase was a bit of a struggle for MTB, we're seeing obviously melee creeps, a team that's, you know, they're going to be much more efficient in how they're going to be exchanging their fights, how they're going to be picking up souls, and just also prioritizing that. And, you know, if you're going to be losing, the losing well is going to be, you know, more in effect. And I suppose even with that said, CP, it's not too uncommon to see frags exchanged.
Dan, I love the politeness. It was a bit of a struggle for MTB. That's like someone's house burning down. You'd be like, oh, it got a little bit hot in your house the other day. It's like, no, the house doesn't exist. It was burned to cinders.
that is
legendary politeness.
British, I gotta keep up appearances.
I know. It's great. It's just like, that is the most pleasant way to describe an absolute beating that I've ever heard.
And the best thing about being British is you say stuff that's really mean, but no one can really tell you've got that plausible deniability. But you've just ruined the illusion for everyone. So cool. Thanks.
I have. Well, it goes back to the old casterisms. Back in the day, remember me and Hex casting the weeklies. It's like, oh yeah, that guy was really ambitious. In what
yeah, that's a good one.
we weren't complimenting his ambition. That was the dirty secret there. It's Vegas. Quick little shot on the Saya as Hydra Nation breaks the kill drought. 15k to 16k here so far. And I was about to say what I'm looking at here is calc, because the Abrams farm quotient, kind of one of the most important things early on in deciding how your game is going to go when you play Abrams, because probably the biggest feast or famine hero, I feel like, in Deadlock, Dan, in terms of like how he plays the game between a good early game to a bad early game.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just because he's such an active hero, and he can't be active if he's like behind in souls. The playstyle just doesn't come together in the key kind of window of time where it's really good and can get a team ahead before the late game where you're going to be just not scaling as well as anyone else. So yeah, it's quite a delicate balance. That's definitely a good point. And speaking of a delicate balance, it's very minimal on the kills. Kulchi is going to be picking up one onto hydration, so keeping hydration in check a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just in lane, quick paradoxical swap and dead. You know, part of why you pick Paradox here. And I think what you have to look at here is like the swaps from Paradox to Vindicta, but also the quick reinforcement into lane 3. Hot off the zip, bring 3 in the lane, look for the pickoff, find Saya. And that's some of the disruption you get early game, where the respawns are so quick that you kill someone, they can just come right back. Often very quickly. Calc, though, airdrop from behind. You see Calc just looking at Ivy wistfully there, Dan, that could have been my hero. You stole it from me.
But actually, secretly, he's like, thank you.
Yes. He's like, I actually wanted to play Big Blue.
Hey, maybe it works out. Maybe we'll see the rescue beam on Abrams charge away, connect the rescue beam right before you press charge. I don't know, does that work? I don't know.
Oh, like you can do all sorts of magic, but also Pop just like staying still there for a while. That was a little bit weird. Like that was actually far more free damage DMB got there than should have, as you know, Pop was just admiring the glutes of the Guardian for a split second.
Yeah,
My best guess.
it's painful to play against Mirage, man. You're just getting chunked down, just consistently getting chunked. And we are on lane 2 here. We've got melee creeps. A good pressure on the lane. Really annoying to play against Holiday. Holiday has been actually an awesome addition to Deadlock. I'm really enjoying what Holiday adds to the game playstyle-wise, and also in the early game as well.
Yeah, I mean, what Holiday adds, I mean, it's a character that emphasizes really good movement. It's a character that gives you playmaking ability with fantastic lassos. I mean, even lasso itself gives playmaking on the casting end, whether it's lasso or lasso. Gives us a little bit more banter. I mean, across the board, Holiday is great.
Yeah, and we've hit that point now, ZP, as well, where the Vindicta's getting a level 5 ult online, so that's going to be a really important thing to keep a check on, because you don't want to get a Vindicta that is too fed, and that's exactly what that ult is designed to do. Okay, we've got a bird going out. I don't know if that's going to be a surface-to-air missile or what's going on.
Bird goes in. It was heading for Vindicta. Vindicta shook off the worst of it. Saya under heavy pressure, but so is Flick. All there or not, Cool Cheese saying, no. I know Holiday's weaknesses. I've played that hero a lot. How dare you steal it from me? But yeah, 31k, still pretty even across the board. Looking at soul allocations here, it's about as even gets here, Dan. The most you could say is for Hydra Nation is, you know, Rocane maybe a little bit behind. Like, if you had to choose who you want farm on, you'd rather more Wraith than 7.
Uh-oh.
Hydration might get this one.
They are committing pretty hard into it. Do they keep going? Okay, they're going to give up the ghost. So I was going to say it's interesting because melee creeps, they got into lane 4, they got the pick off, I think, onto Flick, and then they left, and then they forced Hydra Nation to bring 3 players there. But melee creeps, they went elsewhere, and they're getting a Guardian, they're getting more farm. So melee creeps actually with a winning exchange there in terms of the rotations and the macro. I'm actually curious how the terminology might develop in this game for that, ZP, because there is that kind of like element of we were talking earlier, and I referenced like Newton's third law, which is that you know, you get an equal and opposite reaction, and that's kind of like what it's about. Where if someone puts 3 players on your solo lane, you need to get 2 players to deflect that, otherwise you're going to lose that objective. But if you overcommit and there's 4 players that you respond with, now you're losing out on the rest of the map. So this like very fine balance is where you can get advantages at this top level.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, how they react to it too, right? If the other team is aware you're drawing in a bunch of players, I can just back off and really exploit the macro end. But if for whatever reason they don't expect it and they lose multiple people, it flips the other way. So, you know, delicate balance is absolutely the right way to put it. And also, there might be an assassinate balancing into Mirage's head here, but DMB senses it coming and backs out, which could have been an ugly 1v3. 40k, 36k, melee creeps, small edge right now. And I think keeping the edge, you just got to keep your eye on low main and Cool Cheese right now. This is where you really hope for your Vindicta and Paradox to carry you through the mid game. Yeah,
absolutely. There's no easy lockdown though for low main to get those like really easy snipes. That's like one of those really nice I suppose dynamics that you get with a Mo and Krill that can combo people. So those guaranteed ult kills. But hey, I'm sure they'll find another way to do so. We have some interesting positioning from Young Calc there. He's going to be trying to come in from the side. That 3v3 on lane 4 could be dangerous. Whoa.
You just knew the owl was coming. Meanwhile, Calc diving on in. Grudge versus the Ivy. Every time I look at Calc, it's just Calc v Ivy. Are we embellishing the story? Not really. That is actually every time I've been there. There's a charge into the wall. Calc making it personal. I do think though Axe is going to be able to get away there. Not enough for Calc to really invest on, and you got the counter pressure in. 300 HP on the rooftop as Calc can be able to get away. Decides to go for a punch, a little bit of extra damage, but absolutely dead. Dan.
Yeah, the mind games there about like, you know, going up the rope and then like baiting, like baiting the melee. Is like it's really interesting at this level of play, because there's like a meta game that will develop where it's like, you know, double bluff, triple bluff, quadruple bluff kind of territory. So either way, we'll get a conversion here from melee creeps into this lane where they're looking to get the Guardian. Ooh, there comes Infernus with the concussive combustion. Hurricane doing the damage. I don't know. Oh, Poshy Pop, I should say. Nice parry coming in. And Vegas will go down. So right now, melee creeps are doing a great job here, actually, the CP so far, it would seem.
Yeah, again, pretty even across the board. I do think one thing that's like kind of nice for them, depending on the next life, is where Calc is at on the Abrams. Abrams is like actually in the realm where one more bad fight would keep him perma behind, but telekinesis in. Saya, no last stand available for this fight. Hydra Nation knowing it, being a little bit more aggressive as a result. And you got Vegas back in for more, so this is a heavy committal into the Urn lane right now from Hydra Nation. Cal going in, going for the charge, lands the charge on the Saya, immediately dead. Keeping Calc in the game, farm-wise, on the Abrams.
Yeah, and for this to be made good for melee creeps, they really have to have, they have to get something else somewhere else on the map, and it doesn't really look like that's the case so far. They had some pressure on lane 2 and 3, but there's nothing really that could equal what they just lost on lane 1. Oh, good catch there from DMB onto Axe on that Ivy. And you know, when I said, oh, they're doing pretty well as EP, and I'm like, oh right, because I'm still looking at melee creeps like the underdog, even though they're defending the title. I think that's why that happened.
Well, I mean, look, you got like 12 weeks of Hydra Nation indoctrination to deal with, but ooh, a quick execution coming in there. Swap with the Vindicta follow through when you got both your mid-game threats doubling up. Take down the Mirage. The Urn, by the way, still in motion. First Urn being held. Hydra Nation doesn't want to really go for the Force, and turning an Urn versus Vindicta Paradox, not the easiest option. I mean, it'd be better for Hydra Nation to get a pick off somewhere else on the map and then go for the Urn turn-in, but melee creeps, they're just looking to grab the Urn here and now. They're gonna grab that and see how much Hydra Nation looks to contest this. I don't know if they're in a great spot to do it. They are not.
Yeah, not really in position in time. Although, Young Calc doesn't get in there. Oh, nice parry coming through the Kudzu bomb as well into the stone form. Young Calc's in trouble, actually, a lot of trouble. That did not work out for Young Calc. The solo seismic slam, a little bit too late.
Calc is not a coward.
He's ambitious, one might say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, we've seen Calc actually steal Urn in that case before, but that gambit actually carries more ramifications than you might think, right? Just again, the Abrams trade where you really need to be neutral to ahead of the game to have the most impact as Abrams, and you know, you look at the overall soul allocation, and you know, it's turning into more of the support Abrams, unironically, right? At 9K, you're not the same threat to go in, charge, and kill someone that you would be if, you know, Calc was at 12 or 13K right now. So it changes the dynamic a little bit for Hydra Nation.
It does indeed. It's good that you've been keeping track of this for us, CP. Well, okay, well, hold that thought. We've got another engagement coming through here on lane 3. Oh my god, okay. This is trouble for Cool Cheese potentially, but does have some help here, but everyone's a bit spread out, and that's going to be a focus fire right onto Cool Cheese, and when you're the Paradox, that is not what you want.
No, you do not want a Talon arrow to just explode your head. And that's exactly what happened there in the moment. Low main also very low, where I still like the idea of picking Vegas for, or rather, not picking Vegas. Oh, okay. Just when you think Vindicta's about to get out, flick with the drive-by. But I was gonna say, I do like the idea of picking Talon versus Vindicta. So it does limit just how freely Lomain can fly, at least without taking poke damage. That sets up picks like we just saw there from Flick.
Yeah, and well, you know what? I was gonna make a point, but I'm gonna wait for a moment here. See if we get a defense. Okay, DMB's gonna be pushing the issue. I don't know if that's a good idea here because there's a lot of damage. There's a lot of damage here. The tornado comes in, but DMB surely dead, ticking away. He will die, but the trade is through thanks to hydration coming in at the last second there. So it actually does convert. I think they're fairly okay for Hydra Nation after all.
Still very even right now, Dan. I mean, 77k to 77k. Both teams down 3 Guardians. Both teams with 1 Flex slot. Buffs coming up. I think Hydra Nation might have gotten both buffs there, though. I didn't quite catch who got the right. I think it might have been Calc. I think the one downside here again for allocation is that having a lot of your farm on 7, maybe not the best idea, but hang on. We'll choose right now. Looking for Flick. No swap though, ready. Hydration punishing Saya on the other end of the fight. And Hydra Nation get a clean pick and get the disengage.
Yeah, Melee Crease didn't really have players in position to kind of, they had to kind of scramble to get there, and everyone's a bit too spread out. So now they are a bit more together, at least on lane 2, but they have to worry about this urn drop-off, which is currently in play for Hydra Nation. And if we've got 2 players here for Melee Creeps, there's going to be 3 or 4 or potentially 5 now ready to help secure this one for Hydra Nation. I don't like the look of this for Melee Creeps.
I mean, they have the tools, they get the swap. Is follow-through gonna be there? You have Vindicta here too for the assassinate, but no, okay, Vindicta's just killed. Flick got in on the backside with the aid of Talon. Here comes big old Calc, a double charge! Is the follow-through gonna be there? They're actually still alive after that, but not Pashi Pop. Vegas comes in there with the arrow. Really, really nice fight for Hydra Nation, and I don't know if it's enough for them to go middle just because of respawn towers. It's on the edge. They don't really seem to be keen to go middle, but they do seem to be looking for the earth.
Yeah, again, just it seems like Hydra Nation are. I talked about this dynamic earlier. Hydra Nation, there's not enough pressure on them in terms of the objectives to create a world where Hydra Nation are reacting to you. So instead, Hydra Nation are walking around the map. They're finding pick-off opportunities in spots where melee creeps aren't really wise to it quickly enough. So their team positioning is essentially worse. So they just end up losing out on a pick, and then they try to convert with a trade, and it just kind of goes downhill from there. And so what I would love to see from melee creeps is them finding a way to take put the pressure onto Hydra Nation more, so that Hydra Nation have to react to them.
I think, you know, Hydra Nation, they need to keep the lead they have now. I don't think they can win this if it stays even into the end game. And the main thing is that you think about the heroes that Hydration is usually playing, right? Like Hydration, as performed, is ahead of the game. But Hydration being ahead of the game on 7 is not the same as Hydration being ahead of the game as something like Warden. I mean, 7, it's almost baked into his kit that he's expected to be a little bit ahead of the game. So the entire like accumulating farm a little bit less effective than Norm, but here we go. Holiday, lasso, finish, cool cheese, abducted and taken out. Nice little pick there from Hydra Nation.
Yeah, they're doing a great job here. Very smooth picks. AVG going down as well. The reaction here from melee creeps to defend this point is, again, losing a couple players before the big fight to defend the Walker is not looking good for them so far. Are they able to find anything here? Oh, another pick off. ZP, just everybody's getting isolated again and again. This is the story for melee creeps in these team fights, just consistent isolation.
Yeah, that was just really nicely done by Hydra Nation. I mean, they had not only the rotation there, okay, and just gets the telekinesis on to the back line, sets up low main for Calc, that just hit the easy alley-oop right after. And yeah, I mean, Hydra Nation is slowly starting to walk away at this game on a macro level. And I think part of it is that you think about kill conversion here, the amount of times we've seen Cool Cheese and low main get targeted first before they're able to set picks of their own in the last 7 minutes stand is quite significant.
Yeah, and this was something I was going to draw some attention to earlier, was just, okay, we haven't seen any Vindicta assassinates. I don't think even one has connected. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that, again, melee creeps are not setting up fights. They're generally having to react to these pick-off options that have been taken by Hydra Nation. So you're not really in a spot where, as a Vindicta, your movement is not very good. And you have to spend a lot of time thinking about how you can position and set yourself up to position well for an engagement, and that just doesn't seem to be the case so much here. And even though 7 is expected to be a bit ahead, ZP, he's really bloody ahead.
Yeah, there's a little bit ahead, and then there's this. Also lassoed into the Walker, a little bit of stomp action, just completely denying the ability to even swap. Brutality as Stone Form on the Hydration. Looking for the exit right now, getting chased down by Ivy. Hydration not gonna get away, and it was the assassinate coming on in. But overall, the trade's not very good for melee creeps here, Dan, as Hydra Nation turn their sights on the middle.
Yeah, this is really dangerous. There are 3 walkers left, so if this is a clean rejuve take, which I don't think there's any world where it's not, this could easily convert into like maybe, I don't know, an extra 20k in souls at least, I feel like. So then at that point, you're looking at a 40k soul difference if it goes just smoothly without a hitch.
Now you start getting into the realm of, okay, what does melee creeps have to do to make a real comeback here. And the odds get a little bit long. I mean, anytime you do have Vindicta, right, you do have the ability to just radically get cash off assassinates. And you still have a Paradox, so you could set up paradoxical swaps. However, it's going to be easier said than done. And look at this. Owl in from Vegas, over and in, takes down AVG, sets it up for hydration beautifully.
Yeah, and there we go. We are starting to speed ahead here now, and the map controllers with those super creeps is going to start to really come into effect in any moment now. The urn is being run across into deep territory, into enemy territory of melee creeps, but looks like Hydra Nation are going to go for it, I would expect.
One would think, and again, the abductions continue. Another great lasso by Flick. Doesn't need to be on Paradox to land some incredible pickoffs. Sets up Calc to just lay in the urn. And the soul lead, it's in a way, it's almost been quiet, Dan, but it's gone up rather massively as another walker now goes for Hydra Nation.
Oh my goodness. The alien abductions with the lasso. So annoying to play against that. And melee creeps, there's not too much they can do. You know, they've lost map control pretty much completely because of a mixture of the super creeps and just being so far behind. And they've got two central walkers to defend. And they are indeed about 40k souls behind now. So like you said, ZP, the question is, what do they need to do to get back in? And it feels like it would take a pretty big fundamental error from Hydra Nation at this point. But they still have some rejuve left. I'm not sure how much. And it looks like they're just going to instead of pushing, they're just going to clean up the map. Creeps.
I think they got about like 30% of the rejuve left right now. It's enough to go for a push, but also they don't have to necessarily do anything ridiculous here. They could just take jungle, look for pickoffs, and choke melee creeps out. Knockdown on the Flick is Flick looking for a lasso opportunity, about 8 seconds. And you see the rest of Hydra Nation right now rotating into the fight. The window of opportunity for a pick, a little bit low. Both teams losing one. I mean, getting a pick on Hydration, pretty good value from melee creeps if they can avoid anyone else getting picked here.
I see Infernus.
Calc on the prowl, but melee creeps, I mean, they kind of have to disengage if they can. Pop, though, does not find the exit.
Yeah, not enough burn to take down the Wraith either. You'd need like an extra extended duration. Imagine if you could stack items like that. Now, okay, another fight breaking out near the Walker this time, and okay, Vegas opening things up, and still some of those rejuves are available. So that's a really good fight to take for Hydra Nation. They are going to wipe absolutely everybody under the Walker. Oh, it's just devastating. I mean, the Walker's just there. It just doesn't even matter. And it just seems like this is an open and shut case at this point, ZP. Going to clean up the other Walker. They are 40k souls ahead still. That is such a sizable advantage.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you look at it and just wondering, well, where's your salvation right now? And at most, you're hoping for Cool Cheese on the Paradox to land a swap, but the reality is, once you have this level of advantage, Hydra Nation could legitimately win 5v6. One pickoff, even under the most ideal circumstances, will not be enough. And you've just hit the point where your DPS are going to melt you. Maybe DMB gets caught here. Not looking great for DMB. But the rotations are going to come in, and a price is still going to be paid. Like, this will not be bloodless on the retreat for melee creeps in all likelihood. As the rest of Hydra Nation comes on in for a little bit of revenge action. Specifically, nailed in from the Owl. Hits 3, Dan.
Oh, yeah, that's brutal. They have paid the tax. I mean, man, they got to pay some more, it looks like, because I mean, it might just be the game off of this. You got a lonely Geist, AVG, up on lane 3, just doing some Geist stuff, but ultimately gonna lose the base. So
doing Geist
really
stuff. This is like, well, yeah, she's just doing Geist things while, meanwhile, the base.
Throwing some bombs, shooting a little revolver thing. But yeah,
bringing in the little souls, make an Oathkeeper a little bit happier. But first stage patron going down, Hydra Nation vastly far ahead in their bid to reclaim the throne here at Deadlock Fight Night North America. In our money match, map 1 going very well for Hydra Nation here thus far, and quite frankly, theirs to lose at the moment.
Yeah, 44k souls ahead right now. And another urn to be claimed. And this urn could force the fight that ends the game. That's kind of what this urn represents, because it's so deep. This is like a good fight for melee creeps. This is really the best fight they could hope for, which is still a terrible fight. It's just the best terrible option they have.
And again, we're just looking at Cool Cheese's point of view. We could keep looking at it. And Cool Cheese could land a swap onto the... Oh my goodness. The quick just kidnapping of Saya into the Lion's Den. So not only is there no swap from Cool Cheese, instead it's Flick with the lasso into the quick finish. Sets up the 6v5 where Hydra Nation is vastly far ahead on souls. Dan, this very well could be the map. As Ivy just... Her wings got clipped.
Yeah. Dude, all this kidnapping with the lasso, indeed. Just don't tell Liam Neeson. Don't know if anyone get that reference. Taken. I don't know. Anyway, there's the ult that Jake was hoping to see, and it's just gone. And it's gone.
You know what else is gone, Dan? The Patron. The Patron is gone. Even as Low Pain gets 2 pickoffs here, the rest of the damage is coming in hot and heavy onto the Patron. There will be no reprieve for melee creeps, and their throne may be getting challenged and then some here, Dan, as Hydra Nation up 1-0, looking to reclaim the title.
Yes. Yes, it's a good start. It's a really, really damn good start. And we even had Calc on Abrams. So that's cool. I'm sure people were loving that. However, the issue that we have to kind of discuss here is what went wrong for melee creeps.
I think what went wrong for melee creeps is that it was a slow bleed. I mean, the most I could say is that when you're running Paradox Vindicta, right, you need to get ahead. You need to have presence in the mid game, and it didn't really happen. Instead, it was kind of the Flick show on the other end, where we just saw Holiday making plays the entire time, and without the mid game power, really, the keep melee creeps in it, they just fell behind to a point where everything else fell to pieces.
Yeah, it did feel really disjointed from melee creeps. Just an inability to put pressure on their opponents and just constantly being reactive. But then also, it felt like there was an uncharacteristically large amount of fights where they were isolated. Their heroes were isolated, so they couldn't really help each other correctly. They couldn't really combo correctly. And I don't think that's normal to see from melee creeps.
No, not at all. And I mean, I think you think about back in the draft and how the draft went. I don't think Melee Creeps was as concerned with Hydra Nation getting the early Holiday pick. I think they were more concerned about getting it for themselves, and they thought Hydra Nation would probably prioritize the Paradox. So I think when you look ahead to what will happen in the next draft, you know, not Calc getting absolutely bodied on the parry there, but you think ahead to the next draft, I don't think Hydra Nation will get Holiday in the same way. Nor do I think Hydra Nation will allow melee creeps to play Holiday, because if they change draft strategy, I would expect first ban from Hydra Nation onto the Holiday as a change up from what we saw here.
I gotta say, this is a really cool element of Deadlock, that you can change so much in between maps with the draft. You can just change everything, and I love how a series can evolve in that way. And that's certainly going to have to be the answer, I agree, for melee creeps, to find something in this series, because we had way too much comfort from Hydra Nation right now. Hydration doing the thing where he just like collects the most souls, like he's trying to pay off a debt, and you got Young Calc on the Abrams doing an excellent job not running a support. Vegas just unharassed, uninhibited in any way on Talon, which is very scary. He landed some amazing owls, like consistently, to set up fights or just to do just significant damage. So reliably. So it's too much comfort ZP for Hydra Nation.
Well, speaking of comfort, we got Jake back into the fray. He has dealt with absolute just chaos in the background, but he has braved it all to get back here on the broadcast. Just seeing the 3-man charge owl combo as Hydra Nation, Jake, they won the mid game and never really stopped.
Yeah, and you know, I think melee creeps had the more conventional, high quality draft with a lot of picks that we've seen time and time again winning in Deadlock Fight Night. But this is a new and revamped Hydra Nation, one that I think is leaning more into their personal style and different preferences, and kind of a much more even performance across the board, right? Historically, it felt like it was always the team enabling Lefa and Hydration, and them kind of being these core carries. And while Hydration is still having big games, I mean, the rest of the squad across the board, everyone's performing super well. And I think any kind of concerns about the roster change seem overblown at this point.
One thing I'll make mention of as well, as a quick comment on the match, is I feel like whenever Vindicta's picked, there is a great opportunity to potentially have a big game, but it just it can feel kind of gambly too, because if you don't get the snowball in action, I feel like Vindicta doesn't kind of come online in the key parts of the game.
Well, I think what also really prevented Low Main from coming online is that it was a little bit of a no-fly zone, right? And one of the better picks you can pick against Vindicta is a really good Talon, and there's no better Talon in the business than Vegas. So the fact is that Low Main didn't have the opportunity like you would against some other comps to just simply stay in the sky and cherry pick for the best assassinates of all time. I mean, Low Main really had to pick and choose the amount of times that they're in the air when Vegas was around. Otherwise, I mean, a flying Vindicta is just free damage from a Talon. So I think you have to give so much credit to Vegas for limiting Low Main's ability on the Vindicta.
Okay, I will. Good job, Vegas.
Well, the props have been given. Anything else really show to you there on the stat screen there, Jake? Because the thing that was surprising to me, where I thought maybe it would have been bad for Hydra Nation, is that historically, Hydra Nation really banks on Hydration himself getting super far ahead on a hero that really exploits being far ahead. And Seven, while he got very far ahead on the Seven, Seven has attacks baked in on his performance almost that he's expected to get far ahead. So you wouldn't expect it to be as effective for Hydration as like maybe a super fed Warden.
Yeah, and I think Hydration, though, regardless of the hero he brings out, his farm is kind of inevitable, and in that way, I think a 7 really fits his style. Like if he's going to farm on anything, you might as well farm on a character that farms really fast, is very efficient, clearing camps as quickly as possible. But I think this is a Hydra Nation that looks to be, maybe developing overall, like a little bit less predictable, and that it's not like you already know who's going to be getting all the souls and who's going to be supporting and making space for others. I think this is a more adaptable version of the team that looks to just kind of play to whatever seems to be at their advantage in the moment. And I think long term, that's going to be kind of the future for a game like Deadlock. Like maybe you have that one support who's probably pretty consistently not prioritizing farm and just like focused on showing up to every fight. But across the board, like whoever's having a big game has the opportunity to turn that big game into an unstoppable snowball and really take things over.
All right, well, Hydra Nation, they come back in force in the money match, up one map already, looking to reclaim the throne. But Melee Creeps, they waited a long time to be here. They wait a long time to defend. I don't think they're gonna let this one go quite so easily. This is Deadlock Fight Night, presented by Intel North America, and we'll be right back. The money match continues here at Deadlock Fight Night, presented by Intel North America. Hydra Nation striking first blood against Melee Creeps. They've come prepped, a new draft strategy, a new roster, and now we get to see if they can bring it all the way. I'm ZP here with DDK and Jake. And Jake, I mean, there were some doubts coming in about, okay, will Hydra Nation perform with the new roster? And so far, it looks like they are silencing some of the doubters.
It's not silencing me though, man. I believed in this squad. I just want to put it on the record. I think Young Calc and Rokane have come in. They've looked strong. They've looked effective, and they've played a variety of heroes. This is a great start for this new roster for Hydra Nation. And coming up against the Melee Creeps that we thought would be super dominant, while this early game was competitive, honestly, Hydra Nation mid and late game looked amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like Hydra Nation probably have like so many different comps and pool, like they can do so much with their pool right now, which is really intimidating, I think, especially if you're Melee Creeps coming into this and being like, yeah, okay, how do we do a better job in the draft? Well, it's like there's so much more that's unknown perhaps to you, so it's going to be hard for them.
Well, speaking about expanding the pool, here at Deadlock Fight Night, we've expanded our pool of merch. That's right, go over to deadlockfightnight.com. You can pick yourself out a good shirt, a hoodie, a mug. We got what you need here, all legally distinct enough, but enough that, you can look at it and be like, yeah, I like what is going down on this piece of merch.
I'm waiting for the undies.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Saving up for the Deadlock Fight Night boxers.
We need to get some fight boxers, like actual boxing trunks to go along with it. Look, you make it, someone will wear it. That's all I know.
Honestly, I like that idea. That could go kind of hard.
I'm down. I'll hang on. I'm not going to say anything that will get me in trouble. But there's so many different things I could say. I'm like, you know what? Can we just change topic? Actually, can someone?
Okay, well, we're hitting the escape lever for Dan because the draft is ready anyways. Everyone else forget what was even mentioned here, but it's Melee Creeps. They have chosen first pick, first ban, and Jake, based on what we saw in the last game and its effectiveness, I think Melee Creeps, they open up here and they strike down Holiday.
Yeah, I think taking Holiday out is a decent first ban, but I'm worried. I mean, as good as Holiday is, I think Paradox is a decent substitute for it. Maybe you could ban it first and then also grab the Paradox. I would like that. If you're going to ban the, you're right, good call. Holiday's ban. I wonder if they will take the first pick Paradox now, or if Hydra Nation ban Paradox even just to fully deny any kind of imbalance on these pick heroes.
Well, I don't think we're going to see a Vindicta ban. I think they've proven that they can just leave that open and just like pick the Grey Talon. So that's not going to happen. I'm curious here what Hydra Nation would want to ban. I mean, pretty much it feels like they can work around anything at this point. So they might want to target their opponents. It's okay, so they take away the Yamato. That's definitely good.
I think they just decide there they don't want to deal with Poshy Pop's motto. They'd rather put Poshy Pop on something like Infernus, where Infernus right now has been pretty bland, I think, the last few weeks in Deadlock, where, it's been played as filler for carry heroes, but, realistically speaking, even from the eye test point of view, you're not really looking at going like, oh man, the Infernus had a great game. That being said, look at the current pick. I think bare minimum Paradox coming in. Paradox Wraith is probably the smart money, but as I say that, the Mirage comes in. But this actually just happened in the last draft, where Mirage, of course, also a very good early pick. It's fallen a little bit later in the priority in EU, Jake, but either Paradox or Wraith would be equally acceptable here. But I think with Holiday off the table, I think it would have to be Paradox, right?
I think Paradox is a great opener right now for Hydra Nation, and being able to grab a second pick, I think is really good. I don't love the Mirage first pick. I think Mirage is strong, but I don't know that it offers like anything that's necessarily dominant or puts really a lot of pressure on the other team. It's just that Mirage can show up to a ton of team fights and split push lanes, and like those are powerful attributes. But right now, Hydra Nation have kind of cornered the market on strong opening pick heroes.
Yeah, I mean, not seeing a Wraith here would be surprising, but I know that EU doesn't tend to value it necessarily as hardy all the time. But yeah, I agree. I wonder if the Mirage pick is just them feeling like they didn't control the early lanes as well as they wanted to. Also, okay, the Kelvin's open. There's so much that's open here they could have picked instead of the Mirage. I'm not.
That was what I was going to bring up, is that because it's NA, they could go with the Kelvin or the Wraith, and they do, which honestly makes sense given what it opens up in turn. This also means that, okay, they've picked Paradox. I don't necessarily think they will go Lash, but the fact that they have gone Paradox and they've picked Kelvin now also disincentivizes Melee Creeps from going Lash. Like you talk to players on, heroes they like going up against and certain other heroes, and generally speaking, no one really likes picking a Lash into a Kelvin. So now you kind of look at Melee Creeps and you wonder, what do you pick for playmaking potential here? Because Holiday's off the table, Paradox is off the table. I think at this point, Jake, you're almost looking more towards a Pocket for what's left.
Yeah, I think Pocket would fit decently here, and the good matchup against Kelvin. I do think it doesn't have the conventional playmaking catch and control of some of these other options, but you do have Wraith Mirage, so maybe you can just have enough stuns elsewhere. It's the Vindicta again, and I have to feel Hydra Nation. I mean, I wonder if they just respond with the Great Talon right now. I mean, I think if you don't pick it now, it's likely to be banned out given the performance against Vindicta last game, but I don't see why Hydra Nation won't grab it here.
The question is if Melee Creeps, because I was thinking about this, if they do this to like trigger the chain of events where, okay, we force you into the Great Talon, and then we have something that helps us counter the Great Talon. If they also identify that as the reason why low main couldn't come online. Oh, but we get the Warden instead. Okay, it makes sense.
To Jake's point, I think the Great Talon ban here, absolutely great for Melee Creeps. Highest value ban they could do if they want to let their Vindicta have a good game. In return here, though, for Hydra Nation, I'm thinking about bans that you could go with here. I think you could, target the support end here. Take away the Ivy, maybe force Melee Creeps to go on Beginners if they want to run a support, or force Melee Creeps to run support less, which Hydra Nation did do pretty effectively in the last game, but might not be something they want to do. Instead, they take down the Mo, and honestly, I like the idea because Dan, you had brought it up earlier, the idea of like, hey, Mo is one of the best ways of feeding a Vindicta, right? Well, now you've taken away options for feeding low mains Vindicta.
Yeah, it's definitely less guaranteed.
I think Sinclair is a pretty sweet pick here as well for melee creeps, right? Think about the ults to copy on Hydra Nation side are all three pretty decent value for different situations. So I wouldn't mind to see a Sinclair come out for melee creeps. Honestly, for Hydra Nation either, but I think it fits a little bit more nicely on melee creeps team.
I'm wondering who's going to get the Geist here, because I feel like melee creeps might start being a bit light on the frontline option. And now that you've got the Warden on Hydra Nation, they're going to get that. That's like part of that like snowball comp that you can get where you just barrel down objectives. If you add a Geist to that now, that starts to feel pretty oppressive, I feel like.
They're going to go Sinclair here, I think, because Vegas is hero pool. There's no more talent available. They don't want to give up the Sinclair on the other end. Yes. Okay, that makes all the sense in the world. And I think it was the Grey Talon ban that forced the Sinclair here on top of, Jake, what you had mentioned, where it's like, yeah, if you're playing Sinclair, you would love to copy Warden and Kelvin in particular.
When you copy Vindicta, you also get like a full charge of her ultimate, right? Which could be kind of sick to if you like max your ult. I don't know how early you're really going to prio max the Sinclair ultimate, but honestly it's kind of interesting here, especially, I mean, like, you could just, there's also the boilerplate, just copying the Wraith ult, casting it on Wraith, shutting her down in the team fights.
Take the Ivy away. Does this force the Abrams again? That's kind of what happened previously.
No, they've Kelvin. Calc is going to be on Kelvin in all likelihood.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
So Big Blue Abrams, he's not coming in this time. I mean, they do have ways they could swap around. I just think it's unlikely. It will probably be the era, because we actually did see Calc play Kelvin too in one Llama Lords game, if you think back to it. It happened way in the past, but we know he plays it.
I feel like it's kind of a nice Shiv game for Hydra Nation here. They've got the Kelvin, the combo to keep him alive, to pump heals. You know, could be a strong side laner, front liner.
They could. Yeah. I just wonder who you're gonna have play it between the, because like you have Warden.
Has DMB ever played it? I wonder.
No, they have. DMB has played Shiv before. Like they have run Warden Shiv, but they don't like running Warden Shiv together a whole lot. So, the Geist coming in,
the Geist is makes much higher quality in general. But curious to see what they finish off with. I think it's pretty open ended here. I think they maybe want something to sort of answer some of these flyers. I mean, there's like the Bebop. I don't know if that's like too crazy to pick a Bebop here. I feel like it's not really the Hydra Nation way to go for a Bebop. But at the same time, I think it's kind of interesting here in this matchup.
Backline damage, but I'm trying to think like who's. I mean, maybe they would pick Infernus. I just don't know that that's like the best choice. We've been talking about Infernus gets a little flat. Okay, Calico. So we've got a really like bruisery lineup then. And really get in there. That's going to be super annoying.
I'm looking at these lineups right now, and I think if you're a fan of melee creeps, you're terrified. This is an incredibly strong draft coming in from Hydra Nation. It has really good front line. It has great playmaking potential. I think Vegas on the Sinclair is also like pumped ridiculous damage on the Sinclair, top of it being a bit of a deny pick. And you get Calico at the tail end, value-wise, that is ridiculous. And you have to pick the Lash into the Kelvin. This is not good for melee creeps. I'm just gonna say it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is going to be a tough one. I'm trying to see how melee creeps comp can come together here. I'm trying to visualize it in my mind, guys.
I feel like they need to play for like a very counter initiation heavy style with like Seven and Lash turning fights around that Hydra Nation starts. I don't really see melee creeps being able to start too many fights of their own beyond just like, you know, poking and prodding, pressuring objectives. But you're right. I feel like Hydra Nation has a more clear path to victory as far as their ability to be aggressive, to force fights, on their own terms.
Yeah,
there's a lot of counterplay. Like if the Kelvin ulti is on point, I mean, maybe this puts a lot of pressure on young Calc to be in the right place, right time, every single time with the Kelvin ult to stifle some of these counter initiations. But melee creeps, I'm not sure who's gonna like stand in front and like tank the push. I really don't think anyone can really do that on their roster so far.
I guess one of the issues was that you got the 7 picked up because you can't pick a Shiv, so you can't like beef up your front line to be able to be a bit more aggressive because you got the Geist on the other side and like other good answers for it. So they kind of got wrecked on the front line.
The problem that I really see here is that melee creeps did make a no frontliner comp work in the past, but they made that work when they had Holiday, and I think they also had Paradox there. It was a way more aggro pick-oriented composition, but you know, look at this, Jake. It's no frontline, and it's almost like you're really overly relying on Lash and Vindicta to run away at the game, and those two as a combo without frontliners involved don't really seem that likely to do that to me. I mean, it's the most just you hope Vindicta goes wild game I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and I'm kind of worried about this, you know, the side lane with the Calico. I feel like Calico can be potentially really potent. Maybe, you know, winning lanes is your hope here for melee creeps to start to get ahead and stay ahead. But, you know, if we hit that mid game, and like I just don't know how melee creeps stand in front of an objective and pressure it unless they've already killed all of their opponents and Hydra Nation has made some big misstep. You know, I don't see how you're really taking the fight to the enemy.
Well, they just have to lock in.
Dan, Clinching's got ripped in half at the start of this lane, by the way. Vegas just, I think, landed some ridiculous vexing bolts at the very beginning. And you look at the life bars between the teams right now. Melee Creeps is already suffering a bit in terms of their ability to project lane pressure, with Saya and Coolcheese just not loving their current HP totals.
Yeah, it is definitely not the start that you want to see. Even the Ice Beam over the top as well, young Calc. Just fending them off, and yeah, yeah, we need to see a good early game. We need to see a game where, like you guys said, you can get AVG low main, Poshy Pop kind of just having a good start. Because the problem is when you have these types of carries or like DPS type of heroes, they're not going to have as much impact in the early game. But you kind of need that to be the case in this particular instance, because I feel like Hydra Nation's comp is going to get pretty far ahead by just being able to like bully and play the macro well with all that front line.
Jake, before I let you go, you're looking at the early mid-game situation here. What do you need to see from Melee Creeps for them to bring us to a map 3?
It's got to be a really strong laning phase. I think they've made some mistakes in this draft. I think Hydra Nation has just a much better look overall, and so even an early win in the laning phase won't be enough. I think they kind of need to snowball this game out of control, and that's such a tall order against a Hydra Nation that already has a minor lead.
Well, Jake sounds hopeful, CP. That's what I got from him.
Yeah, there's nothing but hopium there. I think we already established Jason got rid of the hopium supply for the planet last week, is where that was at. So if Jake sounded a little bit downer there, you know, that's why. He didn't get his dose, his quick hit before the broadcast. But it's a tough hill to climb. And, you know, the one thing we kind of brought up with Melee Creeps, you know, it's a younger team full of a lot of Roblox players. Had to get that reference in or Jason would... you know, quite literally end me. But, you know, this is a team that has a lot of individual skills, so they can find a way to beat the odds. Also wouldn't surprise me.
If emos come into this game, I would like to see a Sinclair emo where he's like making like party balloons or something. Party animals. Balloon animals. That's it. That's what I wanted.
Pulling the rabbit hex out of the hat before
That works
throwing
too.
it at you. Yeah.
That works too. But right now, Vegas is just an oppressive, just absolutely beat. He's an absolute beast, just forcing them back. The Vexing Bolt seems extremely strong in the laning phase if you know how to use it.
Every time I've seen Vegas play Sinclair in anything remotely competitive, he just pumps damage. The amount of damage he pumps on Sinclair actually feels unreal relative to the average performance. Also, you know, it's funny, people are memeing about it, but in a way it's kind of true, is that we talk about the nature of Hydra Nation allocating souls. With no left on the team, Hydration is just free to feast. Like, Hydration is going to be the largest warden possible if he does his normal soul allocation. Melee Creeps doesn't make an additional effort to stifle that. Because the way Hydra Nation plays, they're okay going, hey, there's a triple wave going in. Hydration, you don't have to come to this fight, just go get the wave. And they'll do that repeatedly. And before they split between Luffa and Hydration, but now it's gonna be Hydration feasting, not just on creeps, but also on Axe.
Yep, Hydration, aka the Treasury. That's not maybe the best nickname. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but you need to workshop that one.
The Federal Reserve. I mean, look, if you think back to Hydration's prowess in interviews, like, it actually is about as entertaining as an interview with like someone that is currently leading the Fed. So actually, it checks out. And I'm bringing Jake for some commentary on Hydration's ability to give interviews, but we're immediately unpausing, so we'll leave that one for another time. But so far, slight edge to Hydra Nation here thus far, and you know, in terms of ways it can turn around, Dan, I'm just looking at Cool Cheese and Low Main, both hitting 3K. Time to make moves has to be now, and Cool Cheese already on rotation right now over the Low Main.
Yeah, just so far like equalizing things a little bit more on the extremities. 3.3k there for Poshy Pop, maybe not as good as you'd want, but like against the Calico, being even is honestly always a good result in a solo lane, I feel like. By the way, ZP, I'm also going to try to find a moment in the game to fake call in Jake as well, because I just want to keep him on his toes.
That's right. We always know, yes, no, it can happen anytime, but here we go. Cloned 7 ultimate. Doesn't last very long, but enough to clear people out for a moment. Meanwhile, Flick on the hunt on the Paradox. Wall down, swap. Pressure into Cool Cheese. Cool Cheese not able to get away. Flirted with the idea of living for a moment until Hydration just says absolutely no way.
All right, so definitely not an explosive start for either team, and that may feel good, but I feel like we're expecting Melee Creeps, their win con is to get a good start early on, and there he goes. Saya is getting that ult into play. I know that's going to make Jake happy. What do you think about that, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good value, you know, for melee creeps. I think the slash ult maybe is something they can look to aggressively. And honestly, I'm not too worried about melee creeps until we get really deep into the farm game when Hydra Nation start grouping. I think that's the key moment. In the laning phase, like, I don't know how much the draft really matters. In the end, you're just in a bunch of 1v1s and 2v2s, but it's going to be grouping and taking objectives where I'm expecting the game to pop off and honestly play towards Hydra Nation's favor.
I just feel like every time, Dan, we look at lane 2 and what Vegas is doing, it's pain. It's nothing but pain for the other side, and it's unlocking Sinclair's potential is where I think we're at. And lane against Sinclair feels worse in ways than Mirage when Mirage was at his most busted. It's just how I dissect what has gone on in that lane right now.
The Ice Beam. Yeah, I think that's a good analysis. I have to confess something. When I just brought Jake in, I was going to cancel it, but he answered so fast that I just didn't have a chance to.
Yeah,
nice try, buddy.
And now he's like coming in unannounced just for the little bit of taunting right after. I mean, he's absolutely dominating you. It's at least like 2-0.
I thought I had the power, but obviously not.
No. I mean, he's in your house. It might not even be 3 a.m., but he's changed his time zones. It's rough. You might not even get that reference, but if you hear a rip tire, run.
Dude, this ability can go behind walls. Like that dodgy movie where you could bend bullets around, whatever that was called. That movie
You know
sucked.
what? Oh, okay, you're not talking about the Matrix. It's not about the other, but okay. Telekinesis on to Kelvin. I know the movie if I heard it, but it'll come to me at some point. In any case, take a look here at lane 1. Hydra Nation just looking for a little bit of Guardian pressure. Still a ways from actually killing it. 2v2 in lane.
Yeah, on the defense, melee creeps. So far, so good. At least keeping them at the steps. Okay, well, you can't keep Calico at bay for too long. There's the parry on the melee. Running into bullets, though. Like they're going to have to get out of this, but they're going to get a lot of damage here on this Guardian. Akball might be able to get a kill here, looking to pursue. Again, good control from melee creeps, not to give away any kills, but obviously this is Hydra Nation getting what they want. They're getting that damage on the tower. And this is a lot of pressure, actually.
Decent amount of pressure. Cool Cheese still waiting for Death Slam. Not coming to play anytime soon. Flick also on the other end. Able to just get one quick pick off, and Jake comes in the clutch again. By the way, it was wanted. It was in my head. I was like, is it wanted? That doesn't sound right, but that was the name. That was the Curvy Bullets movie.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah. Nice.
Also, Calc, hot pursuit by 7 is going to get away. Nothing too ridiculous just yet, but you know, Hydra Nation now nursing a little bit of a lead here, and I'll draw your attention to what I think Melee Creeps has to worry about, which is the hydration money accumulation protocol, as he gets low main with the aid of Vegas. That was probably like 90% Vegas and 10% hydration finishing it off. But they have to do something to shut down hydration before that turns into a 7k lead.
It does, for me, feel to some extent that Saya could play a really important role if he's able to get some of those key ults, like Jake was alluding to previously, but we do actually have a nice little gank here, and that's going to finish off D&B. So that's a beautiful potential conversion now onto the Guardian. But yeah, I feel like that ult could be pretty good. Obviously, Calc's Frozen Shelter is really the only safe haven if that ult is going to land in a good timing. So if there's no Frozen Shelter available, then that's going to be great. And then also, obviously, the ult's amazing when we're talking about mid-boss and urns and so on. So that is definitely something that I think could work out for melee creeps.
Well, urn is coming down, mid buffs are up. Calc just absorbing the survival buff, so as if Kelvin wasn't hard enough to kill with shelter up, just adds a little bit more onto that. It will be Calc running the urn over, and I'm thinking about how the urn fight will go here. I still generally like anytime you have Vindicta for open urn, like the neutral urns, it's still pretty darn good. I don't know if Hydra Nation really tries to force the urn here, Dan.
Yeah, it seems like that's not going to happen. Hydra Nation, though, going to be trying to fight back into the church here on Sinclair Vegas, taking some respite from the action and able to get out of there by stealing the Traveler.
Just swiped his frequent flyer miles right in front of his head. Just like, I'm gonna use this. Urn still just basically being delayed in middle by Calc, who's been holding on to it for a while. Looking back here on lane 4, melee creeps. Looking to get a little bit of pressure done here. Hydra Nation not going for a full rotate here just yet. I think more worried about their lane presence in other lanes. They give up the Guardian. And it's still Hydra Nation just holding back for now, Dan.
Yeah, and they're getting out of there just before we get the last stand coming into play off of the just off of that like urn drop-off point. I was looking at that on the minimap and like Hydration's looking for a really sick crunch with that last stand, and they evade it just in the nick of time. And in fact, they might even be able to convert back onto some of the stragglers here on lane 1. And the rest of melee creeps rotating back across the map. So the macro's looking good right now.
Rocane just barely got in for the swap, turns the pressure out Vegas, gets on the Saya. If that swap doesn't go down, it goes completely the other way. Unbelievable turn that just happens because you get a little bit too close to Rocane.
Oh, and that's going to also cripple the push effort on lane 2. And all of the players from Hydra Nation from lane 1 collapsing in to assist this fight to decimate the remainder of melee creeps. Oh, wow. Just like you said, CP, just all off of that one swap, everything changed. That's 2 separate team fights that got won because of that.
You hear the inevitability right now, by the way. I'm looking at the hydration doom counter right now. I almost wish we had like a custom UI element for, time until death by hydration. Now at 14K. 2K ahead of AVG, who's the highest on melee creeps, but in terms of frontline, hydration's just gonna be able to walk at people sooner rather than later as he just continues to collect money.
Yeah, it's definitely always a scary thing to be up against when you're playing Hydra Nation. I know you were talking about his Warden in the previous game, how strong he is when he gets ahead on that versus the 7. But we'll have to see. Again, melee creeps do a lot of really good work with Saya. And they have been showing better macro, I think, than the previous matchup. Like this comp is like they're working the comp better. Like we're getting better coordination on the team fights overall, better responses. So it looks like they are in a better space at least.
Yeah, I mean, melee creeps has definitely been significantly more competitive. I do think a worrying part is the fact that even with no talent on the other side, it's been rough for low main, and 7 drops the Storm Cloud in Secret Shop, but absolutely no reprieve. Just too good of rotation from Hydra Nation, followed up by Flick. But yeah, I mean, you see low main at 9K, and the way rotations have gone about, low main just hasn't been able to really get fed, and we're starting to hit the point where you're not really as worried as much about the Vindicta anymore, and that's a real problem when you consider paths to victory that melee creeps wanted to take here.
Yeah, and in lieu of that, you would have at least Poshy Pop would be a bit more farmed, but hey, still a lot of time. Only a 3K overall differential between the sides. It's just Hydration himself is a little bit inflated. Okay, Stone Form just straight on top of the head of Flick. That's going to be enough to take him down. So a good opening to the fight. AVG very weak, trying to get out of there, though. Here comes the assist. Can they keep AVG alive? Oh, it's looking very close, but it looks like that is going to be the case. AVG still trying to fend off some additional players.
Vegas is out of there. Vegas grabs airdrop and, well, no, not completely either. Oh, what in the world? He stays in and dies. Wow.
They were so hungry for AVG's EP. All they saw was red, and that was the end of them.
I heard the airdrop is like, all right, he's gonna get out of there, and it's like, no, there's no cowardice from Vegas in that instance. Cloned airdrop or no? Oh, knocked off the zip line. Well, if any fall through is gonna be there, I think Pop is gonna casually walk away. 77k to 77k though. Melee creeps evening things up in the last few engages, Dan.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're seeing. I mean, I was starting to feel a little bit. Well, hold on. Big swap. Ground strike to try to get away from that, but Cool Cheese is going to get taken out. Cool Cheese not having a good time of it. I don't know that that's really opened up anything for his teammates, but we do have low main on the urn at the moment, and this would surely force a fight. If Hydra Nation, do Hydra Nation want to contest it? They are rotating a couple players across, but I don't think they're going to have the numbers.
They have a 18k Warden right now.
Yo.
Is what they have. Now, Warden, not the turn in yet. You see the hydration cam right now in the minimap, slowly rotating over. Kind of a problem for melee creeps in terms of killing hydration in this fight as it goes about, but especially if Flick is able to open up with a paradoxical swap, nearly off cooldown here. See though, Vindicta under pressure early on. Calc doesn't use the frozen shelter here just yet. Into the air goes Vindicta. And here comes hydration into the front line here, early and often. Calc though, getting picked off. Not the worst engagement for melee creeps here so far. They withstand the last stand. And can they get a little bit more? Stormcloud comes out. Flick though, Cool Cheese out of it. Hydra Nation disengaging decently well and still getting one in turn.
Damn, stealing the Stormcloud is kind of BM. Okay, Flick is going to pick up that urn. It's not going to get stopped. And that's a few more souls for Hydra Nation. Only 4k ahead. Oh, hello. Okay, Calico's in. Never mind. AVG has been eviscerated.
Oh.
Wow,
we just warped into Call of Duty with that level of body shooting.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what game are we in? Flick though, getting caught. Melee creeps, quick on the re-engage here. Hydration would be a prize. They get him for free.
Wow.
Decent re-engage here from melee creeps.
That is beautiful. And they say you can't break apart the Fed. Well, there's the evidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, sometimes you rob Fort Knox, get into those gold reserves.
Yeah, and this is again really great work from melee creeps. That they're taking some punches, but they're hitting right on back, and they're not getting too far behind. And actually, one of the dangers is that AVG is doing a great job staying up this whole time, in terms of the damage output. And I think that is obviously a Mirage that is a bit ahead is really problematic in terms of the damage output, that consistent damage output, especially from ranges. So yeah, melee creeps looking like they're in decent shape at the moment, and that you can see that they're settling into some farming here as well. So they're catching up. They just evened up the souls.
I think the problem is, and Jake had alluded to it earlier, is that as you get into the late game, the position the team fights as they break down is going to present problems to melee creeps, right? Like, not the least of which is that, okay, you have a lot of farm on AVG, but you're up against Calico, Warden, and you have like a swap threat, right? So there's a lot of ways that AVG can either get straight up dove on in these fights, slippery or not with Tornado, or just get simply swapped, right? So keeping AVG alive is significantly harder than letting Hydration be a force when he's ahead on something like a Warden.
What is this? What are the shenanigans that I'm witnessing here?
Human Ward. Yeah. Great vision here at the top of the map, on top of the museum, as it's been so aptly named. And, it's very white up here, so, maybe it's snow, just untextured snow, so Kelvin actually feels at home.
I was going to say, this is pristine, if not snow. So clean. Okay. Well, we get the engage here from Hydra Nation, forcing the issue on lane 2, outside of the Walker, seeing if they can get a pick. And it looks like melee creeps in decent enough positioning to just mount a defense. I don't know that Hydra Nation can crack into that Walker.
All right. Vegas, take it to the sky, drops the airdrop directly on the Vindicta. See if there's any fall through there. They're down 2, though. Like, Hydration and Calc got crushed super early into the fight as Vegas was off on the sky trip. So, not the most ideal start here for Hydra Nation. I think they want to buy a little bit of time so it doesn't turn immediately in the mid boss. But now they're down 3, Dan, and I think you just need to get out.
Yeah, I think hold that thought. Telekinesis comes into play, and I think the magnificent Sinclair is about to be magnificently dead. It's not, like not really. He can move though. This magician. Oh, it's Wraith I'm looking at. Wraith has got some moves then. For some reason I thought I was watching. To be honest, the Sinclair can be basically anyone. So it gets confusing, ZP.
You know, I don't know if it was entirely in the intent, but Hydra Nation sticking around and just being an impediment there stopped that from going immediately to mid boss. And you know, we'll throw with Jake here. Jake, you saw as that happened, like the fight was clearly lost, but they didn't disengage. And as a result, like melee creeps can't immediately go mid boss off of 3 otherwise good picks.
Yeah, it was pretty big that Calico was able to like stall them a little bit longer, delay them from going for that objective. I will say in that last fight, I mean, Hydration died, but Saya was on like, it looked like sub 100 HP, turning around with the ulti lifesteal. So that was incredibly close to going against melee creeps. Hydration just, you know, very slightly overestimating their raw damage, their cleanup potential there. So it's a nice fight for melee creeps to win, though, one that tips the advantage a little bit in their favor. I think they'll need to get more to solidify that. It's not really the start you're hoping for with Cool Cheese dying with Earn in contest.
Yeah, that also wasn't even a swap. No swap was required there. What was off screen? 3-man teleporter and Saya. Watch out! This is just a full-on crew rolling on up. Carbine. Swap gonna be used here. I think it was actually, I think Flick tried to be conservative, and it might cause the 7 to get away. In this instance,
I think Bro just missed everything.
Yeah, that too. I don't know. It was the timing, was it agreed? Either way, 7 is out of there. But Ivy, not so much. Here comes the end. Happy Looney Tunes to you.
Things evening up a little bit in terms of the soul count, but nice little snipe there of the Walker when everyone was distracted. Lemon's in there. Vindicta, not the most agile of heroes. Trying to escape usually just doesn't work. And so that is going to be the story here as well. Dropping straight into the mid boss. Is there anything to answer this with? Not really. Boshy Pop very weak. 3 players dead.
You got
AVG
Death
has
Slam.
Traveler.
You can Death Slam and try and step 7 for the steal, but if it doesn't work, you're down your Death Slam and you're even further behind.
Oh,
and it's just goes Stormcloud.
Dude, it is a party when Sire's in the house, just turning up. Light show.
Wait, a clone Death Slam saying, get that out of here. On the follow through is Vegas. The mid boss, by the way, still torching people from the back, just wondering why he's still even alive. In this moment, Hydration though, down. Melee creeps back into the fight. They pick up 3 melee creeps. Could turn this into a full-on steal. Dan as Boshy Pop goes wild into the back. This has gone terribly for Hydra Nation.
Okay, this is what a turnaround. Beautiful work there. And that's all Saya, man. Getting in there on that timing with the ult, forcing the whole team to disperse. I mean, they talk about the 7, like the 7's big balls, but I think there's a different way to use that terminology for Saya in that moment.
Melee creeps get it. The steal, though, was real close from Hydra Nation, but what a turnaround in game state. Hydra Nation thinking they had the easy mid-boss, side delays just enough, and look, we just brought Jake, but Jake, 7 ult enthusiast #1. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, the 7 ult really just stalled the fight out, right? And then you had to use even the copied lash from Sinclair just to stop the 7 ult. You know, I think that was really well executed by melee creeps, able to delay just long enough for their team to get in and really get the engagement they were hoping for. Calc was forced into, you know, I think less than optimal frozen shelter on the Kelvin, sustaining pretty much only through the 7 ult, not capturing an enemy inside and killing them as you'd normally like to. So some of these like late game team fights, you know, a couple back to back now have gone in favor of melee creeps, and the game's starting to tilt back in their favor. And I mean, eventually, right, like maybe you lack some things in the draft, but usually those holds in your draft, you can plug them with items. You get farmed enough, and I think the draft stops being so crucial. I think late game is still going to be scary. The threat of the Paradox pickoff is always there, and I think that's, you know, no matter how much melee creeps are in the lead, I think they could still struggle if they get kind of picked apart one by one. But this is a mid boss that could really turn into a big advantage if melee creeps can secure a few more towers.
I see guys.
Such good work. Such good work. It was poetry, ZP. It's poetry. Seeing them all disperse onto the side. Cool Cheese comes in. That gives him an even easier death slam. Stuns them. Very, very nice. And for Hydra Nation, what is the path back for them now? Because they are certainly in trouble. They've lost map control completely. Against the rejuve buff and the super creeps, all they can really do right now is just play really passively and just try to wait for it to expire.
I think the path back is that they still have pretty good allocation. I mean, Hydration and D&B are still pretty large threats. You don't need your Paradox to be farmed when the main thing they need is to set up pickoffs. You don't necessarily need your Kelvin to be farmed, and you get farm Hydration, able to find the way through, takes down AVG, most farmed on melee creeps. Early in the fight, Frozen Shelter. Meanwhile, down here from Cal. See Poshy Pop just standing still, tracking from afar. Not enough to get a kill though. Vegas counter-firing now. Poshy Pop perhaps. Staying in. Working on the DMB. DMB nowhere to go. So trade-outs back and forth. 2 rejuves down from melee creeps. But for Hydra Nation, who is behind, not the worst back and forth there, Dan.
Yeah, the instant catch onto AVG, I think was the problem there for sure. That was nicely done by Hydration to get that quickly, and is on the way now potentially here for melee creeps. That would be definitely something that'd be nice to pick up. Hydra Nation though have quite a few players that could potentially intercept this. There's 3 on the map, but actually looks like Flick's going to go back to base, and well, the lanes are really pushed pretty deep, but it is in their territory. This earn drop-off location, Hydra Nation's territory. So surely you would expect them to fight for this. But the question is, would melee creeps want to fight for this? This is, I don't know if you want to gamble an earn fight with the advantage that they currently have.
I think going in here, on one hand, you don't want to give up the urn and give Hydra Nation the path back into the game. On the other hand, you're going... Hydra Nation is just better in up-close combat, right? With the team comp they picked. You don't necessarily want to go into Kelvin, Warden, Geist, Calico up close. It's not ideal. Swap though, in from Flick. Swap through gonna be there after, perhaps not. Slippery as Hydration gets caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, 2 nice pickoffs for melee creeps. Oh, hello. Oh, okay. Whenever you see the storm cloud go up, it's my heart always stops, just flutters for a second. But not nearly enough cover from the teammates to make that really turn into anything good. So Hydra Nation losing 3 players, not able to answer back. More map control, that's going to be an earn now. We're talking about how it was risky before. It certainly isn't risky now to pick that one up. So it just compounds further to the negative for Hydra Nation, as melee creeps are looking really well set up now. Here's EP for the next mid-boss to really take this game, this map.
You know, as well set up as melee creeps are, even as they get the urn and Hydra Nation just kind of has to allow this to go through them. DMB can get away. I mean, that was ambitious for DMB to go in there, but okay, he's able to get away because Calico is just that slippery. But look, for melee creeps, they're very far ahead, but the game actually isn't as over as you expect. Again, it just comes down to soul allocation. The people that need farm on Hydra Nation, specifically Hydration, Rocane, and DMB, still kind of have it. And a lot of their farm deficit comes from Calc and Flick. Hydra Nation can win fights, especially under the backdrop of defending at base, so it's not as cut and dry as you would expect with this level of difference as it would be in most other situations. I firmly believe that.
Well, Poshy Pop is looking in a very good shape here at the moment, as is AVG on a 35k apiece. So as long as they can control, Hydra Nation can control that the output from those 2 players, they should be all right. Kinetic Carbine is going to connect, not going for the swap though. Oh, swap is unavailable. And you can see the poking coming in here from Hydra Nation, trying to create a fighting opportunity. Forced to back off though.
I think the smartest play, if you're melee creeps right now, you do not go for push, you go for mid bosses. You want to fight around mid boss. You need to make Hydra Nation actually commit. And if you're Hydra Nation, it's sort of interesting is that there is a world where they could give up mid boss to just defend at base, because defending at base with their comp, especially with Flick setting up with an early swap, I mean, it is doable. Them going in the contest mid though, especially with melee creeps being significantly ahead on souls, with Saya's ability to deny space, it's complicated.
Lash.
Okay, well, maybe they can navigate the complexity here. I mean, they have shown, I think, in many instances at DFN, the ability to turn around deficits. It does just take one mistake for melee creeps.
Well, one thing Jake brought up, which is very true, is Saya now has Unstoppable on 7, which means that it just gives you more time of your ult not being messed with, right? Relative to getting immediately knocked out of it with either a copy death slam or a knockdown. So Saya continues to be a bit of a raid boss here. Mid boss though is up, and Hydra Nation looking for a pick. Flick already dropping Paradoxical Swamp. None is coming here just yet. They're looking for Pasha Pop. Pasha Pop is the one under the gun. Now we got Saya coming in from the side, drop the lightning ball. Flick goes down. Pasha Pop finally gets taken down. Hydra Nation 5v5. Frozen Shelter ready right now. Refresher has been used, so it's one Frozen Shelter down. Calc waiting to drop another one. Who needs it? Vegas is down. The Storm Cloud in over the top. Hydra Nation down 2. Second Frozen Shelter now down from Calc. All the support in the world, not enough to save DMB. Hydra Nation down 3. Melee Creep still looking pretty healthy. Several members down at half. AVG able to get Young Calc onto the side, and it's just Melee Creeps cleaning up here, Dan. And this could be the beginning of the end for game 2 for Hydra Nation.
Yeah, I really liked what Hydra Nation did there, because they made the fight hard for themselves, but they also made it hard for their opponents. And they did so by kind of like bobbing and weaving around all these corridors and choke points. Because if you imagine that they would go into the open ground around the mid boss, they're going to get absolutely wrecked by the ults from Melee Creeps, especially Saya's ult. So, you know, they were trying to make something of that, but just a bit too far behind, perhaps. That stat check coming in to play, and the Rejuve will go into the hands of Melee Creeps. And as you say, that should really be it at this point. Melee Creeps are so far ahead. 60k souls ahead, almost.
They're just running out of options for viable team fights here. And even the vaunted allocation on the Hydration looks pretty rough when Hydration right now is just even with Ivy, the lowest member on Melee Creeps. I guess Lomain is still pretty low too, right? But all in all, not really great for Hydra Nation. They run out of the ability to contest the open map. They can't really viably contest the urn. I mean, maybe they go for a swap, like Flick tries to pick off a straggler, but it's really tough sailing right now, Dan.
Yep, this might be the best worst fight for you if you are Hydra Nation. Oh, hello. Flying Bunny. So here we go. Looking to contest around the urn drop-off. See if there's somebody that can get isolated for a pick-off, but AVG is going to take down the base Guardian, and they're just going to keep pushing on through Melee Creeps. There's a rescue beam coming in. Support Vindicta.
Last Stand's already been used. Answered in turn by a Death Slam. Last Stand nearly gone, but Hydration still gets AVG after. I think Hydration got thrown into AVG by his own latch, in fact. But I'm not sure how much it matters. Hydration still hunted down as the most farmed player. Melee Creeps, Rejuvenator in tow. I mean, Hydra Nation have traded out 2 for 2 so far. The MB though goes down. It's just the problem is Rejuve is up, and it's, you know, they're down for so long. I don't think it really matters, Dan.
Yep, I don't think so either. Get these shrines down the Patron. They could potentially just keep rolling this through into a victory. They don't need to necessarily disengage from the base here, especially with 5 Rejuves still available. Saya's gonna be back up any second now. And okay, his ult's not going to be up. That would be kind of game changing. So that's not going to be something Hydra Nation have to worry about. But yeah, I don't think Melee Creeps have to give up the pressure here. There's not too much of a reason to do so.
I think they're just waiting for Death Slam right now. Like, they're gonna have Death Slam, Telekinesis back up in a moment. Look for Cool Cheese to take away the Sanctuary of the Fountain as the pressure comes into the Patron, or they just slam the Patron. Slam the Patron, get rid of it. Nothing to be done about that level of pressure at the end. Melee Creeps, they nursed a lead and just added on to it bit by bit. We were a little bit skeptical of the draft, a little bit skeptical of the no frontliner play, but they make it work even without the holiday. Gotta welcome Jake back in here. And Jake, you know, again, we're worried about the draft, and yet Melee Creeps, they still made it work.
Yeah, ZP, and a few of those fights were really on the edge of a knife with, you know, Saya living on super low HP and turning things around with the 7 ult. I like that Hydra Nation stayed aggressive even into that late game where they're down, you know, 20, 30 souls. They were still willing to initiate first and kind of take that gamble, tried to turn the game around, and nearly succeeded at a few of those fights. Really made Melee Creeps sweat despite a much bigger soul lead than you would normally think would be surmountable for Hydra Nation.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the comp and how they made it work. I actually think that was somewhat of the key to their success previously too, if I don't remember incorrectly. they were able to run these types of comps and do so really effectively and be very dynamic with them. So yeah, props to Melee Creeps. They found their footing and their form in this game, but the question remains whether that goes on to the next and final match.
I do think one thing you have to go back and really apply scrutiny to, though, and where the match truly changed for the rest of the game, right, was what happened at mid-boss, where Hydra Nation had the advantage. They were taking mid-boss, and then what happens? Saya comes in, delays on Stormcloud. The execution response from Hydra Nation is a little bit scuffed. Arguably, Frozen Shelter not in the right place. Arguably, the Clone Death Slam maybe not the absolute right play. And Melee Creeps, they trickle back in. They turn the fight. They get kills on everyone in Hydra Nation, and they get mid-boss. And at that point, Jake, there was just no coming back.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the snowball from Hydra Nation, you'd think it would have been enough, but a couple strong fights, and then eventually Melee Creeps just break through to like a certain phase of the late game where they fix all their problems with like the perfect item pickups. They've outplayed, and that's gotta hurt for Hydra Nation, who I think had the tools to close this game out. I think they're going to be kicking themselves for this one going into the decisive game 3 in the series.
There was one actually interesting scenario I noticed as well before that happened, which was Hydra Nation were like just a little bit ahead, and they had full map control. They had killed all of the jungle on the entire map basically, and there was this spot where I think it was where Hydration died. I think he died, and it was like very, very, very close for him to kill Saya or AVG, one of the two. And that fight happened because I feel like Hydra Nation didn't have any other option, I think, that they felt to otherwise just to do anything other than push the base, because every other objective is basically dealt with at that time. So that was the only way for them to leverage their advantage. But the fight looked awkward.
Also, can we talk about what we just saw in the replay there that, I don't think we caught in the moment? The repositioning of Saya there via rescue beam on low main, just getting him to a better spot on the Stormcloud. You don't see Stormcloud even channeled that long for the most part nowadays, at least until today. So seeing the combination of like rescue beam Stormcloud there, actually super, super cool. And look, 7 doubters, eat your heart out. Saya, great performance right now for Melee Creeps in a 0 frontliner comp, no less, to force map 3.
Yeah, AVG too, I think, did a really good job the whole game, because if we think also back to the points before they got ahead, AVG was very competitive, despite there being a lot of oppressive scenarios where low main was struggling. Poshy Pop was also was struggling to kind of be in the spot that you'd want Poshy Pop to be in. And so AVG was like the only person on the team that had that raw damage potential to, I think, really create a lot of threat. And there were a lot of fights that came down to like the last bullet where AVG was managed to survive or just get those extra kills. And that, I think, that really added up for AVG.
Yeah, and Mirage, I think, in these late game scenarios can kind of get to a pretty crazy level where you're just applying your passive so much, you're so tanky, and that late game escape potential from Tornado is really, really powerful, allowing you to be super aggressive, poking super hard, and then still get out without taking too much damage compared to most heroes that have that late game damage.
Again, I think the thing that really is remarkable to me about how Melee Creeps were able to win this, where, a lot of it did kind of hinge on that mid-fight where, Hydra Nation might have messed things up, but also the fact that, we talked about keys to victory. We thought that the one way they would make it work without frontliners is that you would have a monster Vindicta game. It was more of a supportive Vindicta game. It was not the Vindicta, dominates the world sort of performance from low main. Instead, the rest of the team was able to compensate Jake in a way that, I think based on how we've seen other teams play, we didn't necessarily expect coming in.
Yeah, I think Seven and Mirage both stepped up to be huge late game damage dealers, got a ton of farm, and really got to that point, crucially, where you hit critical mass, the 7 ult starts to really be a huge threat in the fight. Mirage is pumping tons of damage. And then although Melee Creeps don't have a real way to initiate aggressively, they kind of were just starting by like ripping a 7 ult in the sky over an objective. And that in and of itself was enough to pressure Hydra Nation to force plays and to try and dive in. And then, the extra rescue beams on characters like the Vindicta were really powerful in allowing the fight to stabilize, reset, and slow down. And eventually, Hydra Nation, you run out of gas on some of these aggressive frontliners. If you don't find kills with the swap, if you're not finding kills with the Warden ult, the re-engage pretty devastating from Lash.
Yeah, I'm excited, guys. I don't have anything to add analysis-wise. I'm just pretty stoked to see the fact that like Melee Crews turned it around. Because honestly, the first maps felt really hopeless in a way that was pretty disappointing. I think based off of the performance we saw in the previous week. So I feel like we're back.
Well, we are back. This is Deadlock Fight Night, presented by Intel North America. We are going the distance just the same way that EU did earlier in the day. It is maximum deadlock here today. It's what Wednesday has become known for here in the Deadlock community. 1-1. Will Melee Creeps hold off Hydra Nation, or will Hydra Nation become the champions once more? The only way to know is to stay tuned after this break. We are back with Deadlock Fight Night, presented by Intel North America. 1-1 in the best of 3 money match. It all comes down to one final map. I'm ZP here with DDK and Jake, and gentlemen, Melee Creeps, we weren't necessarily a believer in the last draft. They made us believers. They turned the tide. And now we wonder, can they defend the championship once more against Hydra Nation? Or does Hydra Nation reclaim the throne and just say it was only number 13 that had them down?
Well, I think it's a good chance. I think what was interesting is that Melee Creeps also found a bit more of what works for them. And I feel like if they're able to just go back to that, make sure that they have a comp that works in that fashion, they'll be fine. They had a lot of good options by the time the mid game to late game hit. They survived until that point, which is kind of what they needed to do. They didn't lose too badly so that Hydra Nation got too far ahead. There's a lot of marginal moments that they avoided to come to that outcome, but they pulled it off. And so we know that they can play those mid to late game comps. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to get to a comp like that. So I feel optimistic about their draft that's coming up.
Yeah, I feel good about Melee Creeps here, but at the same time, I think Hydra Nation could have easily tipped that one over the line. So I think this is going to be potentially a very competitive game 3. Even if Melee Creeps does go for this more passive, like disengage, re-engage strategy that worked for them last game, I still would love for them to have just like one pick-off hero, whether it's the Paradox, the Holiday, somebody who can turn the tides, I think, a little bit more proactively rather than just being fully reactive, because I think Hydra Nation also have the opportunity to figure out what they need to change, maybe draft-wise, strategy-wise, to defeat Melee Creeps. And with how close that last game was, I think either team making a little adaptation could push them over the top.
Well, draft-wise, the draft, I believe, is ready, so all these questions will be answered and more. And of course, the interesting thing for Hydra Nation is, again, they get to choose either their choice of first or second twice in this best of 3 series, something that historically they didn't get to do because they were always on the defending side. Also, something of note here, too, is that thus far, the team that has gotten their choice has also won the map. So with how important draft strategy is, Dan, those sorts of small advantages do add up.
Yeah, they definitely do. Hydra Nation got to observe, some of the things that worked out particularly well. I could even potentially see like a Mirage ban, honestly, because that was such a comfort carry. Because unlike the Wraith or like some of the other carries that are pretty high priority, the Mirage can kind of come on. It comes online like straight away almost with the amount of like consistency with the damage, and that seemed to work out super well for AVG. So that's like if I'm thinking about one of the things that went well for Melee Creeps, I'm thinking about the Mirage. But looks like we get the Yamato instead.
Yeah, Hydra Nation just don't want to play against the Yamato, maybe feeling like it's too much of a comfort pick for Melee Creeps. Curious to see what the first ban, or the ban is rather, for Melee Creeps, knowing that Hydra Nation have that opportunity to set the stage.
I don't think they want to see the Flick Holiday. I think that making that adaptation in map 2 really helped. The Holiday absolutely murdered them in map 1. I think they're willing to have Flick on Paradox. I don't think they're willing to have Flick on Holiday. And it comes true once again where they take that weapon away. And if Hydra Nation is going to reclaim the title, they're going to do it with a different hero than they were able to play on map 1. Now, when you have one pick here, you do wonder, okay, what do you prioritize? What do you have as the number 1? I still kind of think here, Dan, it might be Paradox.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from the Paradox. If the Holiday's gone, the Paradox is that initiator for sure. Okay, we're getting the okay, they're taking a page from Melee Creeps' book. They're getting the Mirage. So Melee Creeps, you'd expect to get the Paradox now. I feel like nothing else makes sense. Question mark.
For me, Flick also had a couple moments in the Paradox in that game where they kind of like let a pick or two slip out of their fingers. And so I think maybe the Paradox just didn't feel as comfortable nearly as the Holiday. I think that's a great call out, GP, that the Holiday would have been a much higher preference for them. So maybe going for the Mirage, you accept, hey, maybe that team's going to snag the Paradox from us, but maybe we can be the ones to change the draft, go a very different direction, and just really set the game to be very different than it was in the last map that Melee Creeps, of course, came out on top.
Yeah, and now the question is, how much do they value frontliners early in the draft now that they've shown they can play without it? I do wonder if they take the Vindicta away here. Like, should they, like, for Melee Creeps, right? I don't think they will pick Vindicta on the second pick here. I think they'll probably go with the Paradox, right? So for Hydra Nation, you have Vegas, who is incredibly talented. Okay, they go Kelvin. That's right.
Kelvin's been going early all day.
Kelvin's been going early.
It's been going very early, and so I think people are just super hot, putting a ton of value on the Kelvin.
I think you get Vindicta here if you're Hydra Nation. Just given the fact that Melee Creeps has liked running it, even though it wasn't the most impactful on individual performance. I mean, Dan, I think you force low main maybe to something else here.
I think Paradox also has to still be considered, even if it wasn't perfect in the last game. I feel like Paradox just really needs to be in the conversation with the pick priority, the ability to initiate fights.
I think it kind of works out well for Melee Crews because they've shown that they're pretty happy also to play Lash in lieu of having a Paradox, in lieu of having a Holiday. So, and Lash is not a super high priority. Unless Hydra Nation decide to like ban it, you know, like when the next ban comes around, which is obviously a possibility. But I'm also curious about the 7, how the teams are rating 7, because both teams have used 7 now to a pretty excellent degree, and it was pivotal in both of their wins. So I feel like that's something I'm starting to think about now, which there we go. There's a 7. So yeah, I was gonna say, like, this is not something I would have thought about any other week, but 7 has come into the meta again.
I do feel like Wraith is a pretty solid answer to the 7, though, right? Because it's just such a quick counter to the 7 ultimate. It's like one of the most reliable, like, single target stuns in the game. And, you know, so it forces 7 to build unstoppable or maybe just not play around the ultimate. So I feel like picking it into the Wraith is very confident for Hydra Nation. Maybe there's maybe they build, you know, prioing the stun or something like that. But I do think the ulti build is what makes the 7 look at its best.
Okay, so Vindicta now getting picked up by Melee Creeps, so the opportunity to deny that going by the wayside from Hydra Nation. I think picking the 7, given what Saya did in the last round, makes a lot of sense. Now, okay, your question for Hydra Nation is, what do you prioritize here? I don't think Melee Creeps will necessarily go a 0 frontliner strategy again. I do think, though, if you're Melee Creeps and you go for a ban here, you probably take out Warden. You get rid of Hydration's biggest comfort pick here, which is absolutely, I think, what Hydra Nation is going to pick next, should it not be banned. And instead they go for Talon. Okay, that also still makes sense. You get Vegas off the counter there, and you go, okay, we're actually okay with, like, Hydration playing the Warden. Interesting. Dan, second ban coming out here from Hydra Nation. I wonder what they really want to take away from Melee Creeps no matter what.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to say at this point. I can tell you it's not going to be Viscous. For some reason, Viscous has disappeared off the face of the planet, which surprises me. Maybe Jake, you understand like why that's the case at the moment. But the Warden goes away. Okay.
From Hydra Nation. Hydra Nation banned the Warden. That's
interesting because we've seen that Melee Creeps doesn't need a front line to thrive. So this feels like it's not too significant for them unless Hydra Nation are going to pick something they feel like the Warden would be a good counter to.
I feel like if you have Kelvin, though, I feel like it's like insane not to run a frontliner, right? Like it's insane not to run, you know, some people who are going to get value off Kelvin's heals and potentially like join him in the dome for like that Thunderdome style. So the Calico can kind of be that, you know, frontliner, fill that role now. Maybe it would have been a Warden otherwise, but I feel like Calico also a high prio hero, and Hydra Nation now. Curious to see where they round out the draft. I feel like we are waiting for the hydration hero here.
They're going to grab Abrams. I think for frontline that they don't have enough viable frontline options. Abrams has to come in. They don't have to pick it now. Like they can literally pick it last because I don't think Melee Creeps is going to pick the Abrams before then. That being said, like they've picked at the spot before.
Take whatever they
and they picked at the spot again.
I think it's good to grab it now. I mean, I feel like they've shown that like the Vindicta, they're great at like comboing down the Vindicta with knockdowns into the pins, and I mean Young Cal's just extreme comfort on the hero. It's a great start. What do they round it out with here though? Like what do we? I think.
Yeah, they
what about a pocket maybe?
Yeah.
Well,
Something that
Geist,
Oh,
okay,
Geist,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, duh. Like, you know what it is? I don't think I think we're all collectively looking at this one. It's like, what makes sense here? It's like normally Geist doesn't drop this low. Like, you don't see
normally Geist would have already gone.
Yeah. So it's just like your brain is like your fifth, sixth pick brain is not thinking of Geist because Geist isn't here. Same reason why it's not thinking about Viscous, where Viscous is still here. And also, by the way, given things that Vegas likes playing, they could go Sinclair again to go for like double dome off the duplicate, or I also think Vegas could go the other direction, which would make plenty of sense to me too on the Viscous.
I think Viscous probably hard this game for Hydra Nation with the flyers and the high mobility characters like Lash and Vindicta. It's just so hard to catch them and really annoy them too much at all with Viscous. So I don't expect to see Hydra Nation do it this game. But you're right. I think it probably is the Vegas hero next. Sinclair just makes the most sense based on what he's played today. And I think it fits well, like, honestly, being able to hex somebody like the Lash and deny his combo, but stolen away by melee creeps. I think there's a really sick last pick. Curious to see what melee creeps really do with it, but I'm less worried about that, and I'm more worried for Hydra Nation. What did they find for their sixth right now?
I mean, it's Vegas's hero pool, Dan, here, so that's why I'm looking at this like...
They're gone.
No, Talon is banned, Vindicta is banned, like...
No,
he actually has to Viscous. It's time to get gooped.
Yeah,
I'm not just talking about our sick merch.
It's a tough Viscous game for me. I don't like it. Maybe you have to.
Outside?
Yeah, they go for support. Okay.
Well, okay, who's playing the Ivy then? Because you probably still have Abrams on the... You still probably have Calc on the Abrams, so...
Hydration can play a Ivy.
It's interesting. I feel like it might be the 7 for him this game, I would think, because he's been so consistently like the hard farmer. And then it's going to be like, DMB on Mirage and Flick on Paradox. So, yeah, I mean, but I feel like Vegas could probably play Ivy. Like, I don't think Ivy is exactly like the one-trick specialist type hero. It is a little bit more straightforward. And I think it could be a strength for Hydra Nation if they're willing to rotate their player who plays support. That only widens the number of options they have, makes them more difficult to draft against when they can, for example, put somebody like Young Calc on the Comfort Abrams.
Yeah, I mean, I think... Makes sense. Yeah, you think about the hero pools we've seen here, it probably makes sense that it's going to be Vegas on the Ivy, which, hey, I mean, look, man of many talents, I think Vegas will play a perfectly fine Ivy in the situation. I don't think it's a cause for Hydra Nation to worry. If we look at the difference in drafts between the two teams also, it's actually, I feel like this is pretty well balanced between early, the mid game, the late game, on both sides, really. Like, you can make arguments either way. I mean, Jake, how are you reading it right now?
Yeah, I don't think either team has like drafted noticeably much greedier than the other. I think a lot of the key matchups are going to be like Geist and Calico being able to trade in the mid game. The ability for Hydra Nation to catch Vindicta, something I'm definitely going to be watching. I think Flick last game, I don't think was his best on Paradox, is fair to say. And so I'm curious to see, I think Paradox having a stronger game could be a critical factor here. It's like you have Kelvin to, save people or turn fights around, but somebody swap deep into the enemy team, you're basically going to need a rescue beam to deal with that. And even with the Kelvin, like it's all your saves are going to be on the Kelvin, can't be everywhere all at once. So I think real opportunities for Calc and Flick, especially to pick off some of these heroes trying to front line for melee groups.
Okay, who's on Ivy? Who's here going, hey, you got to build? I mean, look, it'll still be fine. Vegas or not. Okay, it's clearly Vegas, given the Wraith comment of, quote, welcome to the furry club. I wasn't really aware that was a thing, but as Vegas has dropped the meow, Dan, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing now. I mean, you can't be... Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to move on. I'm going to make the choice to move on.
You saw when it was down that path, you're like, I don't like any of the follow-ups here. I'm just changing gears. Like, I'm hitting the eject button, and just as Axe would have liked to there, as eats a whole lot of damage off the charge.
Yeah, Calc is eerily good at connecting these charges out of nowhere. Very, very nice to see. But yeah, it's going to be super interesting. It does feel like melee creeps kind of outdrafted their opponents slightly. Just like I mean, forcing Vegas onto the Ivy. I feel like you've done something correct here, right?
Well, you look at the early lane situation, Jake. What's really popping out to you aside from Flick getting completely pummeled health-wise?
I mean, this early in the laning phase, I still think it's pretty much a wash. Flick could easily grab a one green item and be back to full real quick. So I'm just curious to see how the game breaks down. Who's getting active first between Young Calc and DMB and even Rokane, like where the frontlining pressure ends up going.
All right. AVG getting the early pick off. Calico is pretty nasty in lane.
Calico's definitely turned out to be one of the stronger early laners, even versus something like Geist. Especially you get melee lifesteal, you have multiple ways of proccing it, and just in general, your ability to punish and keep pressure on when you have an advantage is pretty high. Also, same to be said about Kelvin at points. Things getting real frosty here in lane 2. Calc feeling it.
Yeah, your Calico has 4 things that heal you after like 1,000 souls. There's like 4 things that heal you. So it's pretty crazy, honestly. And the cooldowns are so good. But looks like there might be a gank actually on the way to the Calico. Here we've got Flick making the way across to lane 4. And in fact, that's going to force a response also from Sire.
Ganks on both sides, but it's AVG getting the better of it. DMB down again, and look, I'm getting flashbacks to last week where part of the reason why Melee Creeps was able to beat Hydra Nation is that DMB had a miserable early start to the game, and DMB now down 0-2 on Geist. And, Geist can be effective without a ton of farm generally, but still a hero that prefers farm, and you walk over, run into Abrams in a dark alley, not the best situation, but Ulti's just barely able to leap out of there.
I feel like if you get like hit in the back like that as you're jumping, it should give you a boost. I feel like. Can we make that happen?
In terms of physics, it would make sense.
Yeah.
It would feel satisfying too on the same end. But it's not feeling satisfying though. On the other end is Hydra Nation already down in a little bit of a hole. I mean, Melee Creeps have gotten the better of a lot of these early lane kills, and it's not sound the alarm just yet, but it's a pretty solid lead to be in right now, Dan.
It is looking pretty nice. Considering how things have looked the rest of the series, it's definitely looking great for Melee Creeps. And I think especially, as you pointed out, DMB's struggle is very worrisome if you're a Hydra Nation fan. So I think that's something they can get under control. That's going to require some additional ganking, I would imagine. But fortunately for Hydra Nation, they do have Flick on the lane that's the neighboring lane. So that's a great way to get the ganks in.
Yeah, I mean, I think DMB is just sitting here looking at Flick's soul total being like, please hit 3K. Please hit 3K. I will take whatever help I could get. But 3v2 now in lane 1. Melee Creeps really rotating on in. Oshipop able to find Vegas. Vegas' time on Ivy so far, not perhaps the most enjoyable. And this game, honestly, I mean, look, I'm not going to call it this early in the overall sense, but it's getting rough. The DSB is about to die for the 3rd time in this game. Perhaps goes for the life drain, goes for the parry. The parry would have been huge, but it's not enough. 16 HP. AVG falling at the very end, not able to get away cleanly. Good on DMB to salvage that.
That is brutal though, because that's like another wave of creeps as well that is going to be missed by Vegas. So like just epic harass. Definitely that trade was so worth, I think, for AVG. So oof. Not a good start, Hydra Nation. They had to send again a Flick across to assist there.
It's been a rough early game for Hydra Nation for sure. Now, it might even out a little bit. Flick has hit 3K. Flick already going into lane 4, looking to even the scales a little bit, give DMB a leg up. So we'll see what Flick does now that Paradoxical Swap is ready to go.
We're gonna have to see some Calc magic, where Calc. Oh, hello. Well, he's looking pretty forlorn at the moment, but just that Calc magic where he's able to like kind of take over the game around that 10-minute mark with all the roaming with the Abrams.
I love how you're just like when you see Calc magic and you just almost see Calc just getting floored from a distance as if on cue. Okay,
got sniped. Okay. Was that an assassinate? I think it was. Yeah, it was an assassinate. So you get a nice little cheeky bit of souls in the bag for low main.
Which would be interesting too, because low main, across both games has been a quiet Vindicta day, even in the win. But what a boon it would be the Melee Creeps if low main was able to do a little bit more snowballing this time around. 28k to 25k. And again, I think you're right to bring up allocation, specifically in looking at Calc, right? Where You know, it is one of the storylines anytime a team picks Abrams.
Lane 1, though, we got a Death Slam that's online. Looking for that gank is Cool Cheese. And, I mean, they're underneath the bridge at the moment, but really looking for that Death Slam, I think. I'm not sure if it's still a good option at this point, though. The timing may have gone.
The threat of Death Slam really curtails how aggressive Calc can be at the moment. Like, Calc can't lead with the Seismic Slam, because if you go with that, you're just going to get immediately Death Slammed in turn. As it turns out, Death greater than Seismic in that specific instance, at least until level 3. But Swap coming in from Flick. Vindicta under pressure. Hydration dropping the Storm Cloud in turn, but still not enough to save Flick. Or wait, that wasn't Flick. That was Sinclair dropping the Storm Cloud. You got fooled.
Yeah, honestly, it is actually very confusing to like figure out who is doing the ult.
The one thing I will like bargain for is that we need Sinclair to have like very distinct voice lines that he's copied in ult. Like that'd be great. So you know, look at that and be like, because he even copies the 7 model and it just catches you for a split second. But you know what? We corrected ourselves. We're good.
I'm gonna need you to explain to me, ZP, why the creeps are like little candlesticks.
You know what? For whatever reason, it was deemed effective by the occult industrial complex, as it were. Just standard issue. That's all we got within the lore of Deadlock.
All right, okay. Fair enough. Well, Calc trying to be active here. There comes that Death Slam. Gonna throw him straight into the Guardian. Ground strike follow-up, but it's going to be dodged here because it's straight up in the air. The escape with the Seismic Slam is not going to be too much of an escape. Great conversion there. Flick getting caught in there. DMB with the double on site and AVG. Great conversion coming through in favor of Hydra Nation. But they're still 5k souls behind at the moment as a team.
Huge bailout for DMB, who desperately needed those souls. Frozen Shelter, though, down. The parry from Vegas comes on in. Helps protect his teammate in the Frozen Shelter. Great awareness from Vegas to go in, throw his body into it, make it happen. Even gets a fall through in the Poshy Pop right after. Hydra Nation making the most out of these rotations in the lane 1.
That was so clutch, that parry. Oh my god. They were definitely not going to be able to survive otherwise, I don't think. And be in the position like they are in now, pressuring this Guardian. They're going to convert it, in fact. So huge parry from Vegas, really clutch moment. And that's going to even up the souls as well from a 5k deficit.
Yeah, and 5k at 9 minutes is not insignificant, so absolutely crucial as Rocane just gets plunked. More money towards low main. This is the richest low main has been all day, by the way. 9k on the Vindicta at 9 minutes. They are the treasury now, though. Charge in on the Cool Cheese. Telekinesis in response. Calc not going to go for extra follow through this time around.
And I think a well-fed Vindicta is, I mean, just such a great answer against so many things, but especially Calc. Stake, the long distance damage, the burst damage from the ult, it's going to be a problem. If they can't keep low main down, it is really going to become a problem here.
Buffs coming up in 3 seconds, and first earn. See Saya just weighing there, instantly grabbing the movement. On the other side, not grabbed yet. Anyone? Hydra Nation prioritizing. Looks like they're going to give it to Vegas, and Flick. Again, death slammed into oblivion. This is what just happened there. Meanwhile, Sinclair in on the hunt, looking for Geist, takes down DMB, gets out cleanly. Dan.
Absolutely clinical. Poshy Pop taking one in the chest, a buckshot from young Calc. Calc is in a good job. Hydration just being Hydration, just ahead of everyone on souls.
Can I note something? Is this like a rite of initiation for joining Hydra Nation? What, like, regardless of what hero Calc has been on today, Calc is stuck moving the urn. Doesn't matter. Like, on Ivy, moving urn. On Abrams, urn. Kelvin, urn. Like, the composition doesn't matter. They're just like, we're not running that, Calc. It's your job.
True. It's gonna wait till someone else gets kicked and then joins, and then they can take over. Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. It checks out. Okay, do we have anything to stop this? Okay, in comes the ground strike, and that's gonna knock the urn out the hands. But wow, the response here from Hydra Nation, they're not messing around. That is, honestly, they're just like, what are you guys doing?
that was about the worst response that they could have had in that instance. Also, Clone Stormcloud in. Does enough damage to roast and toast Calc. Saya slips away, finish off Hydration. Great audience participation from Saya to help set that up.
Wow, that is crazy. And also, we're getting way more kills coming in from the Assassinates too. 13k souls for lane main. I thought that Hydra Nation, after that, the kills around the urn, they were in a great spot. But what they didn't sort of, I guess, understand is that the rotation from melee creeps was coming pretty hard and fast there.
65k to 62k. Take a look at allocation again. I think one of the scarier things is just low main, very fed. DMB also very dead in this instance. As Saya, once again, Johnny on the spot. Second look, Calc just going to be shoving down lane 1, which, by the way, I don't hate. I think giving the Abrams time to just eat lanes every now and then to stay in the game farm-wise is smart relative to pulling absolutely everything onto, historically, it would have been like Hydration, Letha, in this case, of course, you know, more just Hydration.
This is actually, I think, the first time we're seeing Hydra Nation, though, be the team that's behind. I feel like, for the most part, melee creeps, even in the game that they won, they were behind until, you know, like deep into the mid game. And right now, that story is the other way around. So we haven't seen Hydra Nation have to come back just yet in this scenario. So we'll be curious to see what they're able to cobble together to that effect. Good map control for melee creeps.
It always make you laugh when Sinclair gets called out on the ping and it's just all in caps. Like, it's so magnificent that it's just 3 words, you know, shouting. Doesn't matter what hero's calling it out. But a little bit of skirmishing here near the secret shop. Calc looking for a charge. Hydra Nation moving forward, and instead it's DMB. You know, we're looking at lane 3, but lane 4 was where the danger was. DMB getting picked once more.
Yeah, the response comes in, though, from Hydra Nation. They are rotating players to lane 1, but they might get crunched, though, because there's more players from melee creeps that can crunch into them from that lane 3. And that looks like it's exactly what's about to happen here, surrounding Young Calc here. He's going down real fast. Young Calc out of the picture. That's going to force Flick to go back to base. This is a complete rout for Hydra Nation, as they're going to have to give up this Walker, I think. There are so many players here for melee creeps.
Vindicta, meanwhile, on the top, looking for Assassinates. This is just absolute pressure coming in from melee creeps. And, you know, the person I feel like that's been enabling a lot of it has been Saya. Like, Saya, all over the map, a key mover in most of these kills, regardless of whether or not they've gotten the killing blow. And, you know, kind of a good time to bring in Jake. Like, Jake, what have you thought about this Sinclair play coming in from melee creeps?
Yeah, not only has it been a huge blocker pick where Hydra Nation almost certainly wanted the pick for themselves, but I feel like Saya has had, in general, a really strong game, although this doesn't look like a good moment for him. Trapped in a small room with the 7 ultimate. But regardless, I feel like he's made a lot of big plays. He's really been pushing the limit on the audience participation. I think the Sinclair hero is definitely going to be something key for the meta going forward.
Just taking one in the arse on the way out.
Dan, that was Assassinates you feel, where you look at that as like it actually triggers your anxiety by proxy.
Yeah. It's not a good or fun feeling. Now, the map control is still decent here for melee creeps. And just, you know, making sure that they can just claim all of... In fact, there's actually some jungle that they can still farm up here. But somehow, actually, despite the fact, ZP, that it feels like melee creeps has been just kind of crushing it the last like 5 to 8 minutes, the score's basically even.
It's even, and also, to go with my conspiracy theory, look who's moving the urn again. It's Calc. Well, don't worry. If Hydra Nation loses again, they will probably grab someone from melee creeps, so Calc will be off the hook for urn duty, if it is, in fact, a hazing ritual. That's just how it goes in the game.
Yeah, I think it most certainly is. I think you're onto something.
Mm-hmm. Hydration gets axed down in the moment. 1 man up is Hydra Nation. Death Slam in from Cool Cheese. Don't think too much came of it there in the moment. And Calc just able to run the urn right on in.
Efficient. Very efficient. Hydra Nation runs a tight ship. Oh, Boshy Pop with the pause.
A tight enough ship that we got ourselves a pause. So back and forth the Souls have gone, where, by the way, Vegas actually one of the more fed Ivies we've seen, 15K relative to the rest of his team. But, speaking of Soul allocation, take a little bit of time to bring in Jake. So Calc's going to go use the bathroom, but hydration, 19K. Just standard hydration stuff here, Jake.
Yeah, it's a classic hydration game, and I think that could be a real problem for Melee Creeps if hydration gets this phase in the game. Like we talk about Seven having a later peak, and I think that is the nature of the character. But man, like the late game, sometimes like fighting around the mid boss, fighting around the base with a late game full stack Seven ulti is incredibly powerful. And it's one of the ultis where I feel like you really need the perfect item build for it to make it strong. And so for Saya, copying it is an option, but I don't think it's going to replicate the full power that hydration can bring to bear. Still, though, I think the game, without mid bosses going down, I don't think anyone's going to get too massive of a lead here. But definitely both teams know that the next team fight that comes up probably could decide who moves into a decisive advantage.
Also, for those watching, if you want to decide things in your chat experience, like having better emotes, Hexagrams right now is our special model for what emotes you can drop down if you just sub to the Deadlock Fight Night channel. That's right, I'm not above just shilling out our channel or our YouTube, where you can catch great YouTube highlights after the game, whenever you want, at your own schedule. It's all at your fingertips, but the pause is over, and thus the shilling is too. Dan, sometimes you just gotta fit it in.
Yeah, you gotta squeeze in the shill as much as you can. Got to keep this operation running. God damn it.
Mm-hmm. Paychecks must be signed, as it turns out, or PayPal. Sending. It's a lot of PayPal, and not the person cheating and getting disqualified kind. The payment service kind.
Let's take out Gigawatt.
Yeah, what kind of weird nickname to pick? But we won't hold it against him. We're just told the cheating thing. Okay.
But,
Anyway.
we held it against him the fact that he will not be playing in the tournaments anymore, and also got hardware ID banned by Valve.
Yeah, there we go.
That is where we're at. But yeah, 93K, 97K, Hydra Nation back into it again. The you look at Hydration's rotations around the map, just gathering farm. He is the treasury, the Federal Reserve, as we called it earlier. But Melee Creep's still in a really good position. But I will say the amount of gap that Low Main had over the game has fallen a little bit to the wayside. It has not been one assassinate after the other, despite the really good start.
I feel like we should give him a different nickname, like what? It's Satoshi's wallet. What about that?
That would be fine. I mean, especially the way it's been going with, how rich hydration gets in the average game. Makes all the sense in the world to me. All
right, well, in terms of rotations right now, like most of the map has been eaten up by both teams in terms of the jungle. So it kind of leaves the teams with like, okay, well, what are more natural objectives that we could be looking to get? Urn's not up. It's going to be in 2 minutes. Mid boss is up. But you can't really at this point kind of go for that. It's just like you can't raw dog the mid boss generally, unless you have like a comp that's really good at like baiting it and having like setups there. But we're not seeing really that for either team. So it kind of leaves both sides in this sort of stalemate position, where if one team doesn't feel like they can go for picks and the other team also doesn't feel like they want to set up picks, you're just kind of farming lanes until objectives spawn.
Yeah, I mean, right now, both teams are playing it relatively safe. And, to your point on mid-boss, yeah, I mean, unless you're running a comp with something like Yamato, right? Where teams with Yamato will take a little bit more risk in just going for the mid-boss because you use Shadow Transformation, make it a lot less hectic and a lot less likely to get interrupted. But in this case, both teams are just playing to not make a mistake. And, ideally, the other team messes up, you take advantage. But it's kind of led to a thing where it's even and... both teams are mostly staying on their side of the map and farming their side jungle.
Yeah, good awareness though here from Rokane, just not going too deep. So there was that teleport gank potential that was up. But yeah, like you said, everyone's playing very safe at the moment. And with that said, we got Lash Calico for Melee Creeps on lane 1. That's a good combo to get some action started.
Might be a combo that's about to get hit with Paradoxical Swap. Flick, moving into the lane. Swap at the ready. Looking for anyone who might be here. And Calc is joining the party. This is definitely a gank attempt coming on in. Carbine, good to go. Drops it. Swap through the wall. Where's the follow through? Calc is on the other side. Calc's got other enemies he's looking at. as this is turning to a full-blown fight. Melee creeps full rotating in. Hydra Nation rotating in. No vindictively seen, but Calc slams on down. Gets one, ready for more, off the zip. And Hydra Nation get far more out of this fight, Dan.
Ooh, Calc is not done just yet. Still on the pursuit. As we move on to Hydration, who's just, oh wow, 24k souls. He's going to finally join the fight, look to finish people off, collect some bags, and then be on his way out. Be on his merry way. Urn is available now for, obviously, Calc to run. Calc will collect the urn, as is his job. Part of his contract, I heard.
I mean, clearly it is. We've never seen Calc not grab the urn. Even in this case where they're prioritizing mid-boss, Calc still has to drop the urn, punch the mid-boss, and we'll see if Calc is the one to grab it on the other side. Rejuvenator coming down. It doesn't look like there's really much in the way of steal options here. If they roll on in right the second, I mean, okay, Sinclair's a little bit close. Is gonna be an opportunity? No, Vegas secures it for Hydra Nation, and the punish might come through here on top of it. Saya, no way out.
Yeah, this is a really bad situation now for melee creeps. They are going to have to figure out a way to kind of handle this. Typically, when the other team has the rejuve, you want to play somewhat passively, especially if you can't catch them on the way out of the mid-boss and get some good fight engagements that can convert. But this is a problem. There's not even anyone to stop this urn delivery. So Hydra Nation's advantage compounds, and yeah, it just sucks because also a lot of the jungle's coming online now as well because it was eaten up moments ago. So right now there's a lot of value on the map for Hydra Nation.
And if you're Hydra Nation, you don't do anything too silly in terms of overplaying your hand. You grab the jungle safely, you abuse the fact you have Rejuvenator, and right now, Flick looking for another pick-off. Carbine into Poshy Pop, Hydration on the finish. Another quick pickoff, and this is quickly turned from an even game to the one where Hydra Nation now a sizable 20k lead. And, you know, Jake, you saw all this unfold. What's really stood out to you?
I mean, I think it was huge that Hydra Nation was able to win that fight with Rokane ratting and Hydration not even needing to pop ultimate. I mean, the initiation power from Hydra Nation is really scary, especially with young Calc. You know, the Abrams, I think, is such an X factor in these fights, and he's really able to get more out of this hero than almost anyone else is. I mean, the hero's pretty much fallen entirely out of favor from being a dominant meta choice, and Calc kind of single-handedly bringing it back these last couple games.
See how that works out for them.
Now, where's my assistant?
You know, you look at it, Dan, I feel like a lot of it is just the game sense, right? Where Abrams is one of those heroes that so much is knowing how to approach a situation to get the max value charge. And the only way you develop that sense is a whole lot of hours on the hero. And you know, you think about overall play time in Deadlock as a whole, probably be hard pressed to find too many people with more hours on Abrams. Maybe the vaunted legendary Yonder I Wander, but that's about it.
Yeah, it is. It's something of beauty, I would say. Love a Calc on an Abrams. A young one, perhaps, has the knockdown, the anchor in the sky. But that Walker, it's definitely under threat here. Hydra Nation are looking to crush this one. The response is here from melee creeps. Can they get the engage they're looking for, though?
Well, it's not bad. The Death Slam immediately takes down Flick, so Flick, of course, will be back off on the rejuve reasonably quickly. We'll see, though, if melee creeps tries to push the issue. I mean, if they, while they have the 65, if they sense any sort of weakness, they should just go in, but I mean, given the economy difference between the two, I don't think they're all that keen to do it. I think they'd rather stay around the Walker, take advantage of the defensive bonus, and just stall out some of Hydra Nation's rejuve time.
What a massive win, actually, for melee creeps. Despite the fact that they got rejuve, they managed to push out lane 3 a lot. They managed to push out lane 4 slightly, lane 2, and also they defended the Walker. So this is actually a very little conversion. It's actually stayed somewhat static at that 20k difference. Well, 90 is actually 17k initially, but now it's only 19k. So only 2k converted off of that rejuve after the mid-boss was taken. That's actually crazy awesome for melee creeps.
And of course, if you're just tuning in, this is our finale of the night. It is a best of 3 series here at Deadlock Fight Night presented by Intel. It's our money match. Both teams have won 1 map apiece. And it's Hydra Nation right now trying to reclaim the throne. And Melee Creeps trying to start their own legacy and win back-to-back nights here in North America.
I gotta say, ZP, I actually, if Melee Creeps can just keep going, I think they're going to scale a bit better into this late game, potentially, depending. I mean, obviously, hydration is a lot of the difference in some of the souls here and there, as we've been discussing. And so, if you look at a Wraith that's really, farms into the late game, the Vindicta, Calico's looking pretty good. You've got some good initiation. Obviously, the Frozen Dome can always be really effective in these team fights. Sinclair, obviously, also lots of utility. There's a lot of danger here from melee creeps. So despite the fact that they're 20k behind, they're very dangerous.
Cool Cheese, I think, was a little bit lucky to get out of there. That Majestic Leap just a little bit later, and terrible things could have happened. But yeah, I mean, how does this keep happening, man? It's just it's just Calc running the urn. And I'm sure there's a good reason for it. And should we get an interview with Calc later? We'll ask. But whether Hydra Nation is ahead or not, you know who's going to be muling the urn over from one side to the other.
That is the truth. Not really an urn that they want to ever drop off, however. That is not a fight that makes sense, I think, for them at the moment. And yeah, the Wraith, Poshy Pop's Wraith, I think is just really scary. I just feel like the later we get into the game, the more of a problem that is, because although Hydration can do a lot with the 7, farm 7, there are lots of ways to just burst down the 7, get the telekinesis on the 7, like just really focus on dealing with the 7. And then if you don't have to worry about 7,
they're going infinite, by the way. This is really good ideal circumstance, especially with like Abrams having survival, and they just let him turn it in. Absolutely free for Calc to just walk in, drops the urn, and now they get out. And if melee creeps overextend, Hydra Nation might be able to punish this severely, Dan. I'm just surprised that happened.
That is actually, yeah, they just timed it wrong, I think, because it definitely looks like they wanted to challenge that.
Let's go to Broadway.
Yeah, they looked at it, and I mean, Calc just kind of looks back at them and turns the urn in their face. It's intimidation tactics right there.
Yeah, that's honestly, that is cheeky. That is very cheeky. Okay, well, the mid boss is going to be up pretty soon, I think, here. So these next team fights could be highly consequential. Looks like this lane 1 Walker is going to get the challenge from melee creeps.
Take a look, a little bit extra survivability for Geist. Abrams, Duration Extender. It's kind of interesting how Duration Extender is a later game item now. There was an era where Abrams would get Duration Extender pretty early into the game. Item builds, though, constantly changing and evolving. Hydra Nation, though, Dan, up about 25k. Calico underneath the walker. AVG looked for a little bit of damage, gets the walker, and now trying to leave with their life. Calc, though, hot pursuit. This Calc could be able to catch over. Sliding, moving, ducking, charging on over. The hunt is on, and AVG is down.
Is there anything on the other end of it, though, for melee crews? They are looking for hydration right now. They're chasing hydration. They got a 3v1. Is he in the dome? Okay, well, there's somebody in the dome, and I don't know if that's very good here for Axe. He's going to go down, and that's a problem because now hydration turns around. He's got his posse with him. The boys are here, and it's just pain for melee creeps. A bad fight, and that's exactly what we're talking about, ZP. Into the mid-boss. It's the worst possible thing that could have happened.
Melee Creeps doesn't really have any great options to steal or prevent this either. Anyone trying to do so is likely just going to feed. This is looking more and more like Hydra Nation might be on their way to reclaiming the throne and just chalking up their one loss as being unlucky number 13. 163k for Melee Creeps to 187k for Hydra Nation. Jake, you've been watching this as well as us. This is a long gap between both teams. What can Melee Creeps do to bring this one back?
I think melee creeps have to find a big fight off the back of this Lash. We've seen Hydra Nation pull this in the past where they've been down souls, down rejuve, and they sort of like find the perfect moment to fight an undisciplined opponent that maybe isn't all grouped up as they push. And for Hydra Nation's side, I think they really need to open some of these walkers. The lack of flex slots is starting to bite. This is the rejuve. This is their moment. Almost certainly we're going to see this come into a push on some of these walkers. Side lane probably the easiest, but I think melee creeps are going to take that fight, and if they can win it, they definitely stabilize the game back to even footing.
Yeah, I think CP, there's definitely options here to try to split push if you're Hydra Nation, to try to try to force melee creeps to spread out their effort a bit, because it doesn't really feel like there is really a good answer for this Death Slam, honestly, from Hydra Nation, so long as melee creeps like have good information and know how to position.
Swap in from Flick, looking for the quick pick off, and Axe is just simply deleted. DMB getting the kill, but the punish after the swap from the Abrams charge into the punch. Now no frozen shelter available for melee creeps. Hydra Nation looking to pile on. Seismic Slam in from Calc. Deep in the melee creeps territory right now. Right now looking for the Walker. Hydration also just incredibly farmed. Even Spell Singer headshots on top of it. Not you see all that often. Most heroes, but yeah, 41k now on 7. Absolutely deadly. Death Slam though in. Could be 2 big picks off here for melee creeps. They get Calc at the very least.
Yeah, but Mirage is whacking away at his second Walker. That's 2 Walkers from Rokane now. Back to back in the midst of this. I mean, they've lost all 3, of course. And they didn't lose many players, just Axe at the beginning. But I've got to say, ZB, I noticed that melee creeps, the person that they sent to deal with the split pushing Rokane to 1v1 him was Cool Cheese, the Lash. And so AVG just like blasted him. And then that was also your Lash not there to defend your Walkers with the Death Slam online, which I feel like is perhaps an oversight. Because I think that would have been a pretty great opportunity to get like a favorable fight, like Death Slam them into the Walker, etc. But either way,
you miss your carbine, but you land the swap. However, I'm not sure it really phases AVG too much. AVG able to just walk on out, fall through from rest of Hydra Nation. Not there in the moment. Also, that is one of the latest restorative walk-ins I think I've ever seen bot coming in from Sinclair. But Frozen Shelter out right now from Max. Melee creep still reasonably healthy. Hydration though coming on in. No Storm Cloud, just raw electricity. Not enough to save Calc though, who gets blown up by the true team effort after the Frozen Shelter.
Melee creep's doing a good job not giving away kills at the moment, despite being at some disadvantages. Now they're going to try to catch the weakened players. Despite Hydration taking down AVG on the Calico, good trade there onto the Geist. Is there anything else there? Very deep toss on that stake. It's going to land. Beautiful work there. Lomane can finish this one off. Dashing down. Oh my god, couldn't catch the kill in time. Rokane though, taking down Poshy Pop. So Melee creep still in trouble here. There's a Death Slam. This could make the difference. Down for the Earth Strike. And the follow-ups. Hydration's down for the count. Cool Cheese trying to escape, and is going to be able to make it out of there.
Flick is still coming in. Flick is full HP. Flick doesn't care. One carbine would just end Lash here and now. Don't know if they're going to get there in time. Axe super low. The Mirage pressure coming on in from Rokane. But it does look like the last few Melee Creeps able to get away. Very back and forth fight. Something that Melee Creeps would welcome, given the fact that they were behind. Or Flick still in hot pursuit. Ends up going down. Catches a Vindicta. Leaves the souls. Just leaves.
Not bad.
Donation. Yeah, Lomane was stuck on the roof there. Just, and again, Vindicta's not very mobile, so unfortunate there for Lomane. Yeah, definitely a series of team fights and melee creeps that I think haven't been as good as they want. At least they were able to get some players on the retreat there as Hydra Nation disengaged. But as we take stock of the situation, it's a 40k soul difference. So yeah, we're definitely, I feel like if melee creeps can just like really just slow the game down and keep just like generating more souls, I still feel like they've got like decent late game scaling that can help them here. But Hydration's sitting on 45k souls right now, and Rokane's on 48. That is nasty.
Jake, you're up about 40k. Mid boss is up in 2 minutes. Your Hydra Nation, do you just slam it as soon as mid boss is up?
I don't think you can force it. I mean, you do have the Abrams ulti as like a sort of a decent secure for the ultimate, but I think Hydra Nation very likely to try and fight on the map instead. Maybe they could bait the mid boss at this stage. I think that could be pretty strong. If you can pull melee creeps into the mid boss and fight around a powerful 7 ult, that could be the ticket. I don't know about finishing the mid boss this late in the game, you know, without pickoffs, without a team fight victory. But I kind of disagree, DK. I think honestly, Hydra Nation are scaling really well. I think Rokane and Hydration are both going to become even stronger as the game goes later. Like, I think this Mirage, the global presence, and maybe if he gets something like a Ricochet for the ultra late game, could really amp up his total damage.
Look right now.
Love it.
Eager to find a pick, goes for the swap. And it's still Lomane not able to get away right as mid-boss is up in the player timer, a little bit behind the reality on your screen. The mid-boss is up, and Dan, Hydra Nation just goes for it off the one pick.
Yeah, well, this is Going to be potentially a great bait for them too, though. They've got a lot of play with this. In fact, they're going to turn around. They're going to try to take down the rotating melee creeps. Sire's out of the picture. Say goodbye to the magnificent Sinclair. And it's just more damage output coming out from Hydration on the 7. Has to go. It's great block of the Death Slam there, going ethereal. He's keeping himself in the fight there, keeping himself doing damage. Look at Hydra Nation just like rolling through like a pack of wolves, taking down every player one by one. Cool Cheese, the next one to die, and there is the secure onto the mid boss now. I don't think there's a single way to stop it.
50k up, only Wraith and Kelvin up for melee creeps. Hydra Nation, inevitability, sticking on in. It'd be Hydra Nation reclaiming the throne here in North America after giving up briefly for 1 week. They did have to retool their roster. They dropped Leffa, they dropped Lord NM, they absorbed the heart and soul of Llama Lords in Young Calc and Rocane. And as a result, Hydra Nation, after retooling and reforming, may be your champion here in North America once more. Certainly everything in this game, Dan, is going their way.
It's very true. I would try to throw some more cope in there, but I think Jake's just going to tell me that I'm wrong. So now I'm scared.
His like Jay's is like, no, it's over.
Yeah. Well, it's cool though, because I heard that from you were saying the chat says we should disagree more. So
that is true. They apparently it's not a true broadcast unless the casters are at each other's throats and just doing fake conflict, as it were. But
100%.
You do have the earn turn in here. Calc, just 100% earn turn in rate for Hydra Nation. Swap over and in. This could be the final song for melee creeps. As Hydra Nation with Rejuvenator now take the fight to the shrines. Melee creeps push back. AVG at Death's Door on the Calco. Gets back into the fountain just barely. Saya, though, punished. The shrines getting pummeled. Full Rejuvenator still up for Hydra Nation as we perhaps, Dan, approach the end.
It's certainly looking that way. The Amber Patron is getting targeted. Okay, well, there's maybe a slight diversion, but I think it's inevitable at this point. Calc in there. Calc's just really doing the Lord's work today here at the Abrams, as expected. It's a brief detour on the Ivy and then returning to full form, winning the games when he's playing Abrams. So Patron transforming, just a weakened Patron that's going to be left. This is it, CP. This is the final lap here for Hydra Nation.
Hydra Nation, they were denied $1,000 last week. Melee creeps took the championship away. But how 1 week changes things and then some. Hydra Nation, second stage patron, under assault. They can taste the North American Championship here on Deadlock Fight Night. Amber Patron going down, down, down. Hydra Nation, your champions once again.
What a masterful
GG's.
performance, guys. Bringing it back. Despite being in the challenger spot for the first time in recent memory, in living memory, frankly, in Deadlock Fight Night, it's Hydra Nation reclaiming the throne with 2 new players.
Incredible stuff. Really impressive from Hydra Nation because they looked so cohesive. And I think, I don't know who you've picked for the MVP, but I feel like if you don't pick Young Calc, the chat will hate you. So that's one thing I know. But I mean, Young Calc did do a great job slotting in, as did Rocane. So, shout outs to them for slotting in so well with Hydra Nation and just Hydra Nation as a whole for looking so incredible after making like 2 roster changes. That's basically a different team almost.
Well, I've looked at the caster chat. I know who Jake has picked. I don't know if our player of the match setup is ready just this instant, but they're kind of taking a moment to kind of view what we just saw here, Jake. This match had a lot of back and forths, but the one interesting thing to me when you look at the final 2 games in terms of the character that really set the tone, regardless of which team had it, it was 7.
7 really was the shakeup this week with like coming into a top form for the meta with, the hero back in the day was super strong, super dominant. I think people have finally figured out sort of the new way to play, the new build. I like Hydration built both improved spirit and improved bullet armor, right? In this incredibly high damage character, just being super tanky, like not trying to be tricky and escape necessarily with perfect movement, just being so tanky that they can't burst you down quick enough. You're gonna get your skills off. You're gonna be able to trade and fight back. Not even relying on the lifesteal, just focus on that raw armor. I think that was a pretty cool build from Hydration. Really well done for him. And I think the hero really suits his strengths. The team is very comfortable playing around a Hydration that gets super farmed, clears the map out really, really efficiently, and still shows up and is a big contributor for the late game fights, which of course is our intel player of the match. It's Hydration. I just felt like across all 3 games, he had a very stable, very strong performance in a team that has just dropped like their other main carry player. There was a lot of pressure on Hydration today, but he delivered absolutely.
Yeah, you can see him robbing his opponent's blind.
This is a legendary moment.
Yeah, definitely. Hydration's always been incredible, just also due to the diversity of his pool and how just you'll never see him pick something that he isn't extremely competent on, and he's played almost everything in all the roles as well, like from support to like more carry roles to just hybrid roles, just a mixture of everything we've seen from Hydration. Frontline as well, like he's done everything and he does all of it so incredibly well, and to be such a defining factor for your team and so reliable in that way is it truly is remarkable.
Well, there are a few things. I mean, you go deep enough into the Hydration lore, you find out that at one point he was a Lash main. He initially started out on Lash, but clearly has just added more and more to his pool over time. Hydration, though, is not necessarily good at everything. For example, in our upcoming interview, even if no one else is on the team, we probably would not interview Hydration. His interviewing skills, going all the way back to his Overwatch days, not good. Likely will never be good, which is why we will not be doing an interview on Hydration later on. So, well, make no mistake, he is not perfect. He has weaknesses, but when it comes to his 7 play and ability to accumulate souls and just be the backbone of his team, no weakness is found there, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, the hero damage speaks for itself, in this game. I think you got to give honorable mentions, though, to Rokane and Young Calc, who came in, looked like they've been on this team for a long time. The rest of the squad really played well around them. Also, props to Vegas coming in on the Ivy that I don't know if he's ever played it before, especially not in Deadlock Fight Night, but having a very stable, solid game, not feeding, continuing to contribute on the objectives, showing his flexibility. At the same time, though, I want to appreciate Melee Creeps for making this, bringing this the distance to the 3rd game, for playing incredibly well. Great drafts throughout, really put a ton of pressure on Hydra Nation. And I really think, despite Hydra Nation reclaiming the throne in NA, I think this is going to continue to be a very competitive region if there's teams like Melee Groups can continue to be big threats.
Yeah.
Well, we have an interview. That's right. The last time Llama Lords won, well, it wasn't really a win, but yeah, we thought it was a win at the time. People said we needed to get the Calc interview. Today, we actually have the Calc interview. So without further ado, Hydra Nation, Young Calc, not Llama Lords anymore. Congratulations on your top spot of NA. And, just to kick things off here, we saw the Calc support all day long. Calc, can you walk us through a little bit of the role change that still had you playing a lot of Abrams?
Listen, man, that boy Hydration is cold, man. And I'll tell you what, yeah, I'm playing support, but I'll play support for these players: Flick, DMB, Vegas, Rokane, Hydration. Hydration's the king, I'll play it for them. These guys are nuts, that's all. I'll do what I got to do.
Well, Calc, ZP made a really interesting observation that you're one of the new players to the team, and it seemed like you were on urn running duty like all the time. Is that like some hazing ritual? Like, why were you carrying the urn every time?
Just worked out that way. I don't know.
You're not trying to cover, are you? Right? Like, is this what, like, you can tell us if they just like hazed you into grabbing the urn every single time? Like,
no,
we're willing to go to bat for you.
I'm just a nice guy. That's all. I'm a really nice guy. So I'm like, yeah, I got it.
Calc, I'm just curious, you and Rokane have come into this team that's had, huge success over the past many weeks of Deadlock Fight Night, has been undisputably the best team in NA. What does it feel like coming into the team with 2 new players? Are you guys like trying to, put your own spin on what the team has been doing, trying to work within an existing system? What's the balance like for your team right now?
Well, yeah, it is kind of like, talking about what we like to do and stuff, and we're still a new team, so it's hard to work out. But me and Flick have a lot of natural chemistry together, and Hydration has chemistry with like every player basically naturally somehow. Vegas as well. I mean, all the players actually mesh way better than some teams when they're new, so the chemistry is really good, I think.
So Calc, we'll open up to you here. Obviously, congratulations again, but any other messages, words to your fans, anything you want to get out there before we let you go?
Well, I think Flick goes under-recognized a lot for what he does. I noticed like when Hydra Nation was winning a lot, Flick didn't get as much credit as he should have ever, and I think Flick is genuinely an insane player. Same with Vegas. I think Flick and Vegas do so much. Even DMB goes unnoticed. I think all those players on the team that I joined, Hydra Nation, I think they're all so good and they do so many things, and people don't know. So I know Hydration takes a lot of the spotlight, but trust me, the other players do a ton too.
All right, well, thank you so much, Cal. Congratulations on your win. Hydra Nation, once more, the champions of North America. And, you know, again, thinking back to the beginning of the day, we kind of wondered, what would the new Hydra Nation look like with the change-ups? Would they still look good against a very dominant melee creep squad? And, you know, some people are doubting. I'll say for the record, I don't think I was one of the doubters, but Jake absolutely was not one of the doubters. And, Jake, you were proven right.
Yeah, you know, I think this is a team like Calc mentioned with a lot of strong players. It goes way beyond just the you know, the names that get the most credit. The rest of the squad really works well together. They dominated NA for so long, not just off the back of like being mechanically skilled, but off the back of having better strategic play, better macro, better movement. And I think that is going to continue to pay dividends for them in the future in Deadlock. This is a team that I think it's great. It's a good sign that they're willing to change. They're willing to adapt and bring in new players. And I think Calc and Rokane could potentially be you know, more of a longer term presence for this squad with how well they look to have meshed in.
Yeah, the gelling is definitely happening with this roster. I'm really curious what the new ceiling could look like, which is what I think Jake is like getting at with that last comment. So that is super exciting, and that should help to elevate the whole scene. I think what Melee Creeps is doing as well is also going to help to elevate the scene, and I think that's so important that you have some of these teams that are doing it right as culture leaders to kind of help foster and nurture new talent in North America, because it's a region that can definitely offer a lot. So I'm excited to see what else we can get out of NA as these other teams start to formulate around them. So long as, of course, we don't get any more poaching happening from Hydra Nation.
well, look, you never know on that front. It's just become an NA tradition. But I'm glad you brought up regions here, Dan, because, you know, we mentioned it a few other times on the show, but as we get to the end here, it's worth reminding everyone, if you didn't see it, we are expanding. Of course, we've done Deadlock Fight Night in EU and NA, but we're proud to announce we're doing our inaugural show for Pacific, and we'll get to see just what teams have been cooking up in China, in Korea, in Australia, a whole new set of Deadlock to take a look at and see, you know, sometimes, Jake, how those innovations can spread to NA and EU after we see them in action.
Yeah, it's always exciting to get a new crop of players. I know the Pacific region, a lot of those guys have been super passionate, super excited to have a forum to compete. So it's awesome that Intel is helping us bring Deadlock Fight Night to the region and to really take Deadlock global, where I think a lot of people know that it's eventually going to go with, you know, potential launch or, you know, future esports possibilities. But it's awesome to be starting to lay that groundwork now.
Yeah, I concur. It's going to be really cool to see the characters that come out of the regions as well. You know, who's the hydration of Pacific? You know, what kind of hero stories are we going to be able to help build in that region? I'm just super excited for all the narratives that are going to emerge, because this game, I think, is going to have a very long history, and I'm sure Pacific's going to be a really big region. And so I feel like that we're really privileged to be in a position to put some spotlight on it from the beginning.
Well, this will bring us to the end of our broadcast. Before we go to the full end, just want to thank the audience, of course, for tuning in. You guys, of course, make all this happen. We could not do it without you. But that being said, DDK, Jake, final thoughts. Dan, you first.
It was a fun show. I think you guys are fun to work with, and I love all of the fans of the show. It's got a really awesome vibe. The community is amazing. So thank you all for watching. And yeah, we'll play more Deadlock.
Yeah, likewise. Great show. It's super awesome seeing, you know, the like early memes now of Deadlock that someday we're all going to be throwing back to, you know, thinking back to these what are now the good old days. So as we live in the good current days, I want to just appreciate them and enjoy what we have together. It's a lot of fun seeing the passion of everybody come together here at Deadlock Fight Night.
Could not agree more. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jake. And thank you, everyone who tuned in here tonight. This has been a pleasure. This has been Deadlock Fight Night, presented by Intel North America. Hydra Nation, your champions once more. $1,000 to them. Will they be able to hold on to it? You'll have to tune in next week to find out. Bye.